Ready?
Gosh, you know what'd be cool? We should make a video and put it on the internet. Yeah!
On January 7th, 2003, children watching Disney Channel were introduced to That's So Raven, the network's first multicam sitcom which followed Raven Simone as Raven Baxter, a teen psychic fashionista with the ability to see events before they happened, often her friends falling in harm's way. She'd usually attempt to stop these from unfolding by taking up an elaborate disguise to infiltrate the situation and mitigate contributing factors, her actions often turning the visions into a self-fulfilling prophecy. She was surrounded by a supporting cast of best friends Chelsea and Eddie, played by Annalise Vanderpool and Orlando Brown, her mother Tanya, Takia Crystal Kima, her father, professional chef Victor, Rondell Sheridan, and her mischievous yet lovable little brother, Cory Baxter, played by Kyle Massey. Across 4 years, That's So Raven achieved unfounded popularity for a series of its nature, being the first Disney Channel show to gain a 4th season and exceed 65 episodes, breaking years of precedent for shows being canned once they had enough content to sustain year-long syndication. But as the main trio of Raven, Chelsea, and Eddie began to age out of teenagerdom and into their 20s, the network began looking for opportunities to conclude the series. But they weren't ready to give up on this franchise yet.
Now is the part of the introductory paragraph where I'd normally explain how we went from a family living in San Francisco to Cory Baxter living in the White House. But here's the thing, there's almost no information about the production of this series anywhere online. So I had to call up the creators of the show, Mark Warren and Dennis Rinsler.
Raven was running out, that we had done already 25 episodes more than they ever did. They only did 75 and they had given us 100. Raven was not interested in doing any kind of sequel. ABC was not interested in aging Raven up and aging the audience up, which would have made a lot of sense to put her in like an ABC sitcom or a ABC Family sitcom and bring the audience with them. But they did want to do a spin-off. They did like Kyle, but they specifically wanted a project for Kyle Massey.
So we were sitting in a restaurant one day. We said, we got to get a show for Kyle. And I was just looking at the cook working behind the counter. I said, yeah, just like Victor Baxter on Cory in the House. But where could we put them in a place that would really amp everything up? And just the White House just popped out. And we said, yes. We started laughing, thinking, yeah, look at the trouble he could get into. And let's put Cory in the house.
This video is going to be fun because we'll be cutting back to them a lot to give insight to the series development and explain the fascinating lawsuit which led to its cancellation.
I remember my grandson sending me an email at the time calling Cory in the House this great anime. He says, why are they calling it an anime? And I said,
as you can see behind me, I've managed to track down the location used in the establishing shots from Cory in the House. There's some guy on a microphone who keeps saying, the stands were installed for the inauguration, and then playing music, and then saying the stands were installed for the inauguration, and then playing another song, and the news crews keep begging him to leave, but he refuses to. Okay, update, the news crews just gave up and left, and the guy on the microphone is taunting them.
You know, you'll be back. You'll be back, and I won't forget you. You will be back. You will be back. You'll be back. So remember this. You'll be back. You'll be back. You'll be back. And you're going to get the same treatment.
Okay, 2 days later, Kamala Harris hosted a rally on those stands in front of the White House. So I think the guy was just wrong. I don't think those were for the inauguration at all, given it's October, and also the inauguration doesn't happen at the White House. This is such a beautiful country, because anyone can just roleplay as the White House DJ and spread misinformation and yell at journalists.
Cory in the House takes place after Raven's gone off to college. Victor has been hired by the President of the United States to become the White House's executive chef. Cory now lives in the White House, and I'd just like to point out that the US Vice President doesn't even live in the White House. Yet Cory Baxter does.
In our house.
Son, even though I am the new White House chef and we live in the White House, this is not our house.
Well, Dad, this is the people's house. And, we the people.
Stories revolve around Cory pushing his usual schemes, mischief, and mayhem, but this time in a new presidential setting, which gives his messes more of a sense of international importance. Like a classic episode in which he accidentally gives the deed to Alaska back to the Russians and has to win the state back by challenging the Prime Minister to a game of Dance Dance Party Tech aboard Air Force One. New lead cast members include Cory's best friends Mina Perun and Newt Livingston, played by Mariah Walsh and Jason Dolley in his breakthrough role, as well as President Martinez and his daughter Sophie, played by John D'Aquino and a young Madison Pettis.
We want to create a new world, with Kyle and with Rondell, and then build a world around them. We have to have the kind of funny best friend, which was Jason Dolley, and then the cute love interest best friend kind of trio that worked so well with Raven. That was Mayada. They wanted a younger demographic, and then we found Madison Pettis, who was a breakout. She was fantastic.
All Disney cares about is funny kids. So if we could find funny kids, and that was the goal, they're up for it.
And this was pre-Barack Obama, right? Obama was 2008. So we were a little bit ahead of our time. They wanted some kind of minority representation as the president. So we read a lot of different actors, men and women. We weren't really limited.
The first episode of the series, New Kid in Town, has a paper-thin storyline because its main priority is introducing the dynamics and personalities of our 8 main characters. In it, Cory Baxter and his father Victor move into the White House, where we learn that Victor has been hired as the president's executive chef while Raven's away attending college. Cory, a huckster and snake oil salesman, attempts to license presidential bobbleheads for sale, but is quickly shot down by the president's no-nonsense executive assistant, Samantha Samuels. Cory attends classes at the prestigious Washington Prep, where he meets 3 classmates with powerful parents. Newt Livingston III, whose father is a senator and mother is the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, she's Chief of Justice or something.
Jason Stickler, whose father runs the Central Intelligence Agency.
So he's like the head spy?
001.
And Mina Perun, whose father is the ambassador of the fictional country of Bahavia.
My father makes me wear this stuff. He's the ambassador from Bahavia.
This is her accent in every single episode. This doesn't stop Cory from developing a crush on her. Unfortunately, he'll have to compete with Stickler for her affection. When Mina mentions her adoration for horseback riding, Cory claims to be a multi-trophy winning steeplechase champion to impress her.
Cory, you're afraid of horses. You threw up on a merry-go-round.
Agreeing to participate in a dinner party at the White House to celebrate the Junior Riding Club, Cory desperately needs to research horses quickly. In comes little Sophie Martinez, the president's daughter, who Cory tricks into taking him to the computer so he can research. Apparently the most conveniently accessible computer in the White House in 2007 is in the Oval Office, which he takes him to through a passageway. There is an actual hidden passageway on the opposite corner which leads to the cabinet room in the real White House, and I know this because Joe Biden gave a tour on YouTube. However, when President Martinez arrives and Sophie abandons him, Cory is forced to hide under the president's desk alongside the president's rarely seen beagle, Humphrey. Through contrived circumstances, Cory must lick the hand of the President of the United States to evade detection.
Good dog.
Welcome to Cory in the House. At the dinner party, Stickler decides to expose Cory publicly by coercing him to mount and ride a horse live in front of the presidential congregation. Cory's humiliated and falls into a pile of horse shit. That night, Cory runs into President Martinez down in the kitchen, and he's given a long pep talk about keeping his head up and never giving up. Cory approaches his friends the next morning, and they tell him that he didn't have to lie to seem cool. They thought he was cool regardless. Despite a friendship literally built on exposed lies, Mina and Newt see a great future ahead with their new friend Cory Baxter, who smiles at his new life as Newt is picked up from school by helicopter. The show doesn't have a super tight formula. It's far looser than Raven trying to prevent revisions, which gave every episode a fairly consistent narrative structure. Here it's just Cory makes things go wrong at important professional events, while the other characters make jokes on the sidelines, and Victor gives him a stern talking to at the end. Something I find interesting is that the pilot, and therefore the show in general, don't elaborate on how the president even became aware of Victor Baxter. Rather, it seems that Keystone exposition was entirely relegated to this obscure promotional music video.
What's up, y'all? Now I'm Cory. Oh, come on. This listen up real quick. People, let me introduce myself. I'm Cory from the San Fran Bay. The Golden Gate Bridge is my backyard till the press came to town one day. You see, the one cuisine that the president adores is my dad's specialty. Now we hooked up Dad as his White House chef, and we're headed off to D.C. Come on,
Presidential mandate, serve up nachos, everybody in the home to D.C.
We're going to D.C. Y'all ready? Let me just spin one more time at y'all. Now we're burning through Las Vegas, and the heat is out of hand. We rock the flow to the Alamo, hey, but this ain't our last stand. From the Ark of old St. Louis to PA's Liberty Bell. Come on, we got the sound, we got the tube, and we rock the food as well. Let's go. Now we're kicking it here in D.C., and this is where the fun begins. I got a brand new home, a brand new life, and all these brand new friends. Now the president's Oval Office is outside my front door. We're plugged in at the White House, and it's time to rock the floor. Let's go.
Cory in the house, coming in January to Disney Channel.
Per tradition, after covering the pilot, I'm going to introduce you to the principal cast of characters. The series is led by Cory Baxter, whose role is widely expanded from what it was in Raven. Here, he evolves from an ancillary character to the centerpiece of every storyline, which is a very smooth transition because he was already being given more narrative responsibilities in the previous show as it aged on. It works a lot better than, say, trying to give Arwen his own series. Whereas Raven was focused on becoming a fashion designer, Cory's relentless pursuit of being a businessman takes the forefront, a trait which carries over from the previous series. Nonetheless, his role seems far more Raven-esque, especially in how he's forced to improvise in the face of his best-laid plans going awry. In what feels like a very direct response to Raven saying, "Oh snap," Cory is now given a collection of recurring catchphrases. Cory likes to say, "Dang!
Dang! 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 Dang, Sophie! Dang, girl! Dang, girl! Dang, girl!
Dang! Still not close.
As well as "Comin' Daddy!"
Comin' Daddy! 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 Comin' Daddy!
Episodes also frequently end with Cory's pants falling down in public. Cory, as you've seen, is loud and bombastic, built on Kyle Massey's charisma, which works especially well because Kyle also knows when to go understated.
Oh, that's how it's supposed to sound. We'll be right back. Yeah, read a book or something.
He reminded us of an old TV star named Jackie Gleason, who was big, loud, over the top, funny, physical, and we said he's like a little Jackie Gleason, and we were always his fans.
One thing that feels absolutely essential to address before we discuss Cory in the house any further are the allegations of inappropriate communication with a minor leveled against Kyle Massey in 2021. Allegedly, a 13-year-old girl and a family friend of Kyle Massey was receiving sexually explicit images from him over Snapchat between December 2018 and January 2019. During which time Massey was requesting the girl stayed with him and his girlfriend in LA, the girl being from Seattle, Washington. The mother sued Massey for $1.5 million. Massey has remained adamant that the case is extortion and a completely false allegation against him.
The person that molested, raped, took advantage of me when I was a child is now painting me as the predator.
Now, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not in the business of throwing out allegations, but the case started when the mother in question turned over a flash drive to the police containing sexually explicit images and videos of Kyle Massey. I feel that if that flash drive didn't contain any such videos and images, the case probably wouldn't have been opened or pursued further. The fact that he never returned for Raven, the fact that Cory in the House isn't available to stream anywhere, shows that at the very least, Disney and all of his co-stars were willing to cut ties with Kyle Massey. As a matter of fact, a revival of fishhooks was considered early during the pandemic due to his popularity on Disney+. But it was ultimately decided against, a big factor being the allegations against Massey and eventually Roiland, leaving Chelsea Cain as the sole protagonist of Fishhooks who has not allegedly committed a felony. It doesn't necessarily look good for him, but still, these are allegations. This isn't a Drake Bell situation where he's come out and explicitly said, like, yeah, sorry, I did that. Nonetheless, Massey has maintained his innocence for years, and that's where the conversation kind of ends unless there's more information that comes to light. Regardless, it's an uncomfortable looming shadow over this entire show, and it makes moments like this really uncomfortable with hindsight.
Newt Livingston III, Newt being short for
Newton,
played by Jason Dolley, is an airheaded electric guitarist who has no smarts at all because his brain is filled to the damn brim with a desire to rock out and say awesome.
Awesome! 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 Is that awesome? Awesome! 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 Awesome or what? Awesome! 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 Awesome!
Newt, he's stupid.
Remember, you both put your pants on one leg at a time.
One at a time? I knew there was a trick to it.
But it's not always traditional sitcom stupidity. He's just off in his own fantasy land in his brain, saying things that can only conceivably make sense to him.
What part of forbidden don't you understand? Because for me, it's the hidden.
He's like Drax. He doesn't have much of a grasp on exaggerations or metaphors.
Shut up!
No, let him talk. I want to hear what he has to say.
Get out of here!
Okay.
However, mostly early in the first season, the writers have Newt randomly whip out the most articulate and sophisticated phrases out of nowhere.
A quagmire of epic proportions. Cataclysm catalytic chemical reaction within the Nikishka. And my plan to convert the grading system into a multi-tiered program based not on the traditional bell curve, but rather on a true meritocracy.
Newt heralds from a successful political dynasty who hasn't lost an election in 5 generations. Newt is cursed with unfathomable charisma, which he can effectively channel without even trying to. I said cursed because he doesn't want to hold any responsibility, this leading to an episode with a fun premise where Cory and Mina have to help Newt lose the class elections, but Newt keeps gaining in popularity against his will at every turn.
I didn't realize how powerful your charismatic electability was. I don't know if it's your winning smile or your golden hair, or I'm even getting caught up in it.
It wasn't the water that turned the frogs gay, it was Newt. While Cory is a conniving schemer, Newt doesn't have a mean bone in his body and acts as his moral compass.
Oh, is that really cool? I mean, you're kind of using candy.
Although the spirit of Abraham Lincoln also served as Cory's moral compass once. However, Cory's pretty mean to Newt. He uses and abuses him.
Did you mop out those portable potties like I asked you to?
Come on, Candy. You got to have faith in me, baby.
Cory, I mopped out those potties like you asked me to. It wasn't as much fun as you said it would be.
It's more palatable than, say, Alex abusing Harper, though, because Newt genuinely doesn't seem to mind or be bothered by getting treated this way. Is it better? I don't know. Newt is honestly a character that could become very grating if he was played by a different actor. Jason Dolley, in his first Disney Channel role, makes his character work with great line deliveries for material that's otherwise very generic.
When my parents want me to do something, they take turns yelling at me till I change my mind.
No offense, Newt, but your mind's a little easier to change than Mina's.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Okay, you're right.
See?
Mina Perun, played by Mariah Walsh, is defined almost solely by her vaguely Middle Eastern home country of Bahavia. It's treated similarly to Esteban's mysterious country from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, in which he mentions random traditions and cultural elements in nearly every episode.
In my country, Bahavia, there's this song called the Yak Arena. Ahoof, ahoof, kayak, kayak, blur ha, yak, yak, yak. That's Bahavian for yay, yay. In Bahavia, knocking rats from a shoulder is the national sport, so in my country, Bahavia, we have this say. If you don't bite the mishva, you'll never taste the chishva.
There's still more.
An old Bahavian remedy.
Ow!
Deep fried goat foot. I blognish. That's Bahavian for oh dang.
It keeps going.
Like we say in Bahavia, if the yak's not hungry, don't feed it.
Bahavian superstar Iqbal, master of the nose flute.
In Bahavia, we keep our valuables in a salted yak's belly where it's safe.
There is still more.
I earned this one for yak herding. This one for yak milking. This one for yak shaving. This with Grandma Parum's old-timey Bahavian stain remover. A splash of yak milk. Pinch of goat horn. And a teaspoon of squirrel tears.
Bahavia, as you've seen, is mainly just used as a source of laughs. It's not taken seriously as a nation. Baba Booey is said as part of a Bahavian ritual. The show plays a laugh track when President Martinez just pronounces a name.
Ambassador Rom Parum of Bahavia.
Although Bahavia is mainly used as an outlet for stereotypes, it does factor into her characterization and her relationship with her traditional old-school father. Mina is tired of her archaic culture and wants to embrace her new American lifestyle, something her strict traditionalist paternal figure is not fond of.
You left your yak backpack in the limousine. You're not ashamed of this, are you?
We like hitting that kind of oddly foreign culture, Bahavia, where we could just make up any kind of crazy rules and language and music and costumes. And that actually came from Howard Stern. He had a guy named Riley Martin who claimed he could talk to aliens, and the aliens from a planet called Bahavia.
That I personally witnessed aboard the Great Mothership. And these are the Bahavians.
I threw that in, and nobody ever picked up on it, us. But it was our own little inside joke.
Well, you know, we learned a hard lesson when we were working on Full House. John Stamos, who is Greek, wanted to play a dual role and play his Greek cousin who comes to the house. He said, I know these characters. They're so funny. He'll come in, he'll be a liar and a thief, and he'll drive everybody crazy. And we thought, oh, let John do it. He knows it's his family. So he went all the way, robbing, stealing, lying to the family on Full House. And the next thing we know, we're getting petitions from the Greek American Society and angry letters. How do you stereotype Greeks? And you did a terrible thing to our culture. And we decided the next time we have a foreigner, we're making up a foreign country, we could have them eating goat feet and yak juice and any crazy thing we want. No one's going to be upset.
Sophie Martinez is the president's daughter, or the first kid. She's America's angel, or at least that's what they call her.
America's angel.
That's what they call me.
America's angel.
That's what they call me.
America's angel.
That's what they call me. America's angel. That's what they call me. America's angel. That's what they call me.
America's angel.
That's what they call her. America's angel.
That's what they call me.
America's angel. Yeah, that's what they call her.
America's angel.
America's angel.
America's angel. America's angel.
America's angel.
America's angel. America's angel. I'm America's angel.
Sophie is a mischievous child who primarily acts as an excellent foil for Cory, throwing a wrench into his schemes with her own counter schemes as she slowly learns all of his tricks.
Let me get this straight. You're breaking a promise to me?
I never promised.
It was implied.
Sophie is to Cory what Cory was to Raven early in that series. The chaos agent with limited screen time, due to child protections. At the start of the series, they feel very equally matched, as Cory is able to pull one over on her just as easily as she can pull one over on him. It feels realistic, though Sophie will be given far more narrative power over Cory as the show progresses.
You know what'll be so much more fun than Digital Doll Party?
What?
Looking up stuff about horsies.
Horsies? Okay, I'll show you the secret passageway.
Let's go! Yay! Little kids are so easy.
President Martinez, played by John D'Aquino, is the single greatest part of this series. He is
the President of the United States. The President of the United States. President of the United States.
The President of the United States.
The President of the United States. The President of the United States.
The President of the United States.
The President of the...
Martinez is a very kooky guy, and God bless him. It's established, as the show begins in January 2007, that this is the beginning of his first term in office.
I'll be here for the next 4 years.
I feel like there's a bit of Al Gore awkwardness / stiffness to him. He's corny as hell and makes the dumbest jokes, and god damn it, I'd vote for him.
My nasal passages are as free as our great nation.
He's also comically vain, semi-regularly expressing his adoration for himself and having his face molded onto the presidential medals he gives out. If Martinez could make this meme real, he would. Low-key, he's just Donald Davenport from Lab Rats. But I think that's an easy comparison because every single one of these shows has the one adult who's running circles around all the other actors and is wildly entertaining. An important component of his characterization is that, for no discernible reason, he really likes Cory.
Thanks for the advice, Cory. Up top.
All right now.
No matter how severe Cory's disruptions are to the administration, President Martinez just utterly adores him and is never given any plausible justification, which honestly makes it considerably funnier.
Cory's in charge.
Mm-hmm. You can count on me, sir.
They often enjoy midnight snacks together. President Martinez has Cory's personal cell phone number and calls him directly sometimes. Sometimes President Martinez seems more perturbed and bothered by Victor than he does by Cory.
He can break it like Oprah. Sure.
Chef Baxter is very much the same gentle and supportive presence he was in That's So Raven, a kind-hearted person who is often completely ignorant of Cory's incredibly obvious schemes, although he's able to lock in and sternly punish him once he becomes aware by the end of the story. He's always a little worried that Cory's antics are gonna get him fired.
I'll go pack. I'll go pack. I'll go pack. I'll go pack.
He's something of a father figure for Sophie in her father's frequent absence, and he's good friends with President Martinez as well.
I may be the president, but you are the mayor of Funky Town.
His socially awkward nature leads to frequent comedic misunderstandings with everyone around him.
So, Chef Victor, how are we doing?
Well, sometimes I feel like there's a wall between us.
Not our relationship.
Hi, Pumpkin.
Hi, Mr. President.
I was talking to my daughter.
Of course you were.
What do you think of this uniform?
Well, Mr. President, I'd have to shave my legs, but you're the boss.
Today's our anniversary, and I was just wondering what you thought about a diamond tennis bracelet.
Well, sir, I do have an unusually large wrist. But if you can find one in my size.
I think he was talking about the First Lady.
For The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody had Arwen and Esteban, Cory in the House also has two recurring characters that stand head and shoulders above the rest, both of whom were introduced in the pilot alongside the main guys that made the theme song. Samantha Samuels, played by Lisa Arch, is the president's wound-up, stressed executive assistant who works hard to keep the White House running on schedule.
But I am in charge of this afternoon's Presidential Medal Banquet honoring Professor Susan Bushwick and her work with the overly stressed.
What's overly stressed?
Don't interrupt me!
She lacks social skills and social awareness.
I have a story that will scare your socks off. Social Security is going to run out before any of you reach retirement age. Ooh.
This may be why she has a huge chip on her shoulder due to years of childhood bullying, and she's all too eager to stick into those bullies in the modern age.
And for all you kids at El Camino High School who thought I was weird, how do you like me now, cheerleaders? I'm with the president!
This also leaves her eager to receive childhood experiences she was too unpopular to receive, like when she participates in Sophie's slumber party as an adult.
I'm going to a slumber party! I'm going to a slumber party! We're gonna do makeovers, we're gonna sing songs!
She doesn't have a zany catchphrase, it's kind of tragic. Whereas the president is utterly chill with Cory, she's constantly trying to combat and nullify his antics to no avail, and always looks for opportunities to bring the hammer down on him. This smartly circumvents a problem I discussed in The Sweet Life on Deck. While Mr. Mosby started as the stern hotel manager up to his neck with Zack and Cody, he evolved on Deck into a gentler, calmer, ancillary character. With Ms. Tutwiler a complete pushover, this left no authority figures to punish the twins across the last 2 seasons of On Deck, and left the series utterly without stakes. With the president completely chill with Cory, which has great comedic value, Cory in the house could have easily fallen into the pitfall. But the inclusion of Samantha prevents that from happening, with her getting on Cory's case as episodes end, and Victor taking that responsibility in the episodes without her. Cory's rival is Jason Stickler, played by Jake Thomas a few years after his lead role in Lizzie McGuire. Stickler constantly tries to mess up Cory's plans in a competition for Mina's affection, using some sort of CIA gadget in each episode.
Stickler? Do you like my official CIA bathroom ceiling suction suit? CIA cash card cruncher. CIA temporary memory loss spray. CIA laser door burner. CIA instant smoke shield. CIA rhythm destabilizer. CIA retractable oil slick. CIA teeny weeny robo technology. CIA mini rocket getaway umbrella. Up, and away!
Most of this technology fails spectacularly, which makes you question if the CIA has underwhelming capabilities, or if Stickler has underwhelming capabilities. It's also worth noting that Mina is explicitly not interested in him, but bless his heart, he never gives up. Stickler generally isn't taken that seriously as a threat by the narrative, or any of the characters besides Cory.
That last game is mine.
Stickler! I think they definitely could have pushed this dynamic further into Zim Dip territory, but as it stands now, it's a fairly lackluster rivalry that doesn't have that many memorable interactions or moments. Stickler is like Marcus from Lab Rats if he wasn't iconic, but I don't mean that as an insult because he's still like Marcus from Lab Rats, he even does the eyebrow thing sometimes.
It took 25 years and 10 million tax dollars to develop this little baby.
Oh, gotcha!
Now that you hopefully have a good understanding of the principal cast of characters, let's dive into the 21-episode first season of Cory in the House, which aired from January 12th to September 21st, 2007, somewhat awkwardly concurrent with the final few episodes of That's So Raven. I also feel obligated to mention that this is not a series that in any way justifies going over every single episode one by one the way that the Sweet Life franchise did. I just don't have that much to say about a lot of this show. It would be boring for you, it would be boring for me. Rather, I'll show you some of my favorite episodes and discuss a broader summarization of the entire series.
Excuse me, sir, who are you voting for? You're a coward, sir. You can't just run away from this. I can see you have strong and complex feelings on immigration.
Here we go. I'm the new kid, moving in, getting it done, and I'm officially the candidate for having some fun, you know?
You better calm down, Cory.
Yeah. I'm talking about an all-out party, and we're getting it started. Mr. President, you mind some electric guitar?
Washington, D.C. will never be the same. We got Cory in the house.
Yeah, it's a party every week, baby.
Cory, check it out.
That's right, I'm in the house.
He's gonna shake it up and change it.
Shake it up.
Take it all and rearrange it.
Just a little bit.
New thing on the sand. We've got Cory in the house. Cory in the house.
I'm your man.
I love how Mount Rushmore is in Washington, D.C. In 2014, a YouTuber named Filthy Frank jokingly said that his favorite animes consist of Toy Story, Cory in the House, and airplane instructional videos. And then since then, it's very common for Cory in the House to be referred to as an anime online. And I'm just curious, have you guys come across that or seen that?
I remember that. And I think it was all because the main title opening was really cool. You know, they're holding the Washington Monument and they're spinning records on the White House. And somebody really did a great job on that. And I think that got us a lot of attention because I remember my grandson sending me an email at the time calling Cory in the House this great anime. He says, why are they calling it an anime? And I said, I think it's the opening. I think that's what it was. And we were happy about that. And there was a lot of great YouTube videos making fun. And then whenever you want to trash somebody, it's somebody in the house, and they use our White House in that opening. We loved that. We were so happy with it.
That was the highlight of the run.
In Season 1, Episode 6, Napper's Delight, Cory is excited for a skiing trip alone with Mina in South America, and fantasizes about the moment he can make his move.
There is no snow.
Well, that is in South America. Down there, it's still winter.
I'm very confident this episode was legitimately my introduction to time zones and the concept of different seasons on different poles. Unfortunately, Stickler would like to usurp the opportunity to be alone with her and uses his CIA card cruncher to destroy Cory's credit card. With no access to money, banks and withdrawals don't exist in this episode, Cory must find a way to prevent Stickler from getting time alone with Mina. Cory is so needlessly jealous of this man who Mina is explicitly not interested in and repeatedly calls creepy.
If you don't stop creeping me out, I'm gonna have to call the authorities.
Cory's cash generation solution is to host under-the-table sham tours of the White House. Cory uses Sophie, America's Angel, that's what they call her, as a selling point. But when she quits due to him not paying her, he's forced to scramble to get her back and stop her from ruining everything.
America's Angel.
That is what they call me!
America's Silent Angel. No flash photography.
But the pictures won't come out.
Ma'am, if you can't follow the rules, I'm gonna have to ask you to pay extra.
In the B story, President Martinez's sleep schedule has been thrown off after a visit to China, leading to him constantly calling Victor in the middle of the night. They both learn about Lincoln's bedroom, which supposedly has the most comfortable bed in the White House, leading to them sleeping together.
This is soft. Ah, you said it, buddy.
Yeah! What are you doing here? Well, since my trip to China, I've had some trouble sleeping and... Wait a minute. I'm the president. You should be explaining to me. And as long as we're already here... Sweet dreams, Chef Victor.
Good night, Mr. President. Night.
Cory's tour group, chasing Sophie, mistakenly believes she's gone into the Lincoln bedroom, leading to my single favorite scene in the entire series and one of the most chaotic things I've ever seen.
I know you in there.
We're busted.
But we didn't do anything.
Don't you get it? If they find us in here together, they'll think we're lazy.
Right.
They'll think we're lazy. I laughed uncontrollably for a full minute. Cory arrives and starts tickling the president's foot.
Dang, girl. You got some big hairy toe knuckles.
What is this, a Nickelodeon show? Ha ha ha, get it? Victor and the president reveal themselves, and the entire crowd calls them lazy, until Cory's able to spin up a story about the president celebrating National Snooze Week.
It's good for our health, and it's good for our country.
Cory is forced to mop the floor and miss his skiing trip. Fortunately, it seems that a blizzard causes Mina to cancel her trip regardless, stranding Stickler all alone. How did the show perform rating-wise?
No, funny thing is, the ratings we got back then, people would kill for, because you can't get millions of people like that anymore. Everyone's watching YouTube. Everyone's watching you, kid. But at the time, we were just below great. You know, we were okay.
They were solid. They weren't as good as Raven, but it was building, and we were still kind of finding the show. Maybe Jason Dolley was breaking out a little bit.
Stories often focus on Cory, Mina, and Newt's rock band, DC3, where they perform as a semi-regular alternate fill-in house band at a juice bar known as The Library. They get paid in juice. This leads to the show introducing completely random musical numbers, as Disney Channel was trying to force the network and all of his stars to embrace a musical identity in the wake of High School Musical and Hannah Montana.
Situations change, people drift away, but I promise I'll always stay the same. Always stay the same.
You put every Disney Channel song into a blender together, I think this is the result you would get. You might see the gang struggle to write a new song, or Stickler try to join the band with a device to ruin Cory's rhythm. Given this show's musical identity and musical backdrop, I think there was a severe missed opportunity to have Cory yell, "Mr. President, get down!" and have Martinez start breakdancing. In episode 8, Just Desserts, Mina introduces a wonderful Bahavian delicacy known as a makishka. That broke very cleanly. I remember I wanted one of these so badly as a kid. Cory sees a business opportunity and registers a company to produce and distribute makishkas. Samantha is hosting a presidential medal banquet to honor Professor Bushwick's work with the overly stressed, and the venue needs a calm and non-threatening dessert. Cory, despite signing a contract promising not to cause mischief and engage in wacky business schemes, decides to cause mischief and engage in wacky business schemes, as he enlists his Makishka company to provide the dessert for the venue. Despite Mina's insistence that Makishkas must be made slowly and with care, Cory decides to rush and complete all of them within an hour. However, due to him using baking soda instead of baking powder, the lemon sauce getting poured on the Makishkas causes them to fucking explode. Now 3 dozen bombs go off in a room full of the easily stressed, and Cory has to urgently scream at everyone to leave. Although the banquet seems to have at first been a disaster, it turns out that all of the stressed people have been fully cured due to exposure therapy. It's very much implied that Cory did more to help these people than Professor Bushwick did, the woman the banquet was designed to honor. In the B story, Sophie is mocked by her popular classmate Tanisha for not knowing how to ride a bike without training wheels.
You can't ride a two-wheeler. Yes, I can. No, you can't. Yes, I can. Sophie can't ride a bike. Sophie can't ride a bike.
Imagine doing this to the president's daughter. This girl is one person removed from the nuclear launch codes.
Hello, Army? Yes, it's Sophie, the president's daughter. Yes, I need you to send Tanisha to the moon.
Aboard Air Force One, flying to presidential business, President Martinez feels bad that he isn't there for his daughter during her trying time. Victor decides to teach Sophie how to ride.
I taught Cory how to ride a bike. I taught his sister Raven how to ride a bike. And I will teach you how to ride a bike.
Then, we learn that President Martinez turned his flight around and abandoned his presidential duties to come help his daughter, which is treated as an extremely sweet moment within the context of the episode. Although I don't necessarily know if this is something I would want my president doing. Then Sophie crashes and dies. The end. You might have noticed that Norman, one of the stressed patients, is played by Fred Stoller, who was the evil apartment manager in the 4th season of Wizards of Waverly Place, the human disguise of the Dark Angel Gorag. He also voiced Fred the Squirrel in The Penguins of Madagascar. Sitting between that Nickelodeon/Disney casting umbrella, Cory in the House actually features a lot of familiar faces, from Wizards in particular. Bailey Madison, who played Maxine during the 6-episode absence of Jake T. Austin during Wizards' 4th season, shows up as Sophie's classmate Maya in 2 episodes here. Kate Bakushi, who voices a lot of modern Disney characters like Webby from DuckTales and Sarah from Milo Murphy's Law, as well as being the current voice of Velma in Scooby-Doo media, plays Becky, who's the manager of a store called Cheese in a Cup.
You've been extruding cheese for 6 months now!
Amanda Tepe, who showed up as a variety of different characters across the first 2 seasons of Wizards, plays a White House tour guide named Donna, who even comes with her own series of running gags across her 3 episodes, which even persists in episodes where she doesn't appear.
It's the president! No way, no way! 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 Go way, go way!
It's the president! No way! No way! No way! No way!
The show in general has fascinatingly good continuity. Little story developments remain consistent across 3 episodes. After Newt wins the class election in episode 5, he's referred to as class president in episode 7 and episode 17. In episode 2, Ambassador Perum becomes more understanding of Nina embracing the American lifestyle, a development which sticks. Sophie's favorite board game is Dippy Dippy Dolphins across multiple episodes. Cory's favorite show is always Kung Fu Cats, a carryover from That's So Raven. Even down to random side characters. Cory watches the same random woman on an MTV-type broadcast in multiple episodes. This show brings back the exact same security guard 15 episodes after his first appearance. Sophie has the exact same Secret Service agent in every episode.
Watch this, Sal. I'm gonna get my daddy good.
I'm afraid I can't let that happen.
One of my favorite examples, Newt makes the exact same bird call as President Martinez 25 episodes apart. Was this intentional continuity, given these scenes have no connective tissue? The episode had different directors. Why even do that? Was it just Jason Dolley remembering the way that call sounded and consciously or subconsciously parroting it? We don't know, and maybe we'll never know. It's at a point where they bring back characters so frequently. There's a character named Haley with 5 appearances, and even after watching the show and putting this chart together, I didn't even know who she was. It's just some random classmate of Sophie's who has like 1 or 2 lines per episode she's in. And yet they consistently remembered her and kept bringing her back. Given how every contemporary series tended to place their episodes solely in a vacuum, the amount of attention Cory in the House pays to its own lore is really amazing, and years ahead of the curve when that rapidly started becoming the norm in television. The plethora of speaking characters goes hand in hand with the fact that this show seemingly has a massive budget. On a sliding timescale, the earlier Disney sitcoms have countless characters who can talk whenever, while later Disney sitcoms have masses of completely silent extras. resulting in a genuinely uncanny nightmare world where no one in the school speaks if they're not a main character. This show can seemingly spend money wherever and whenever it wants, in contrast to the series later in my childhood. The same goes for this early gag where Newt fakes a porcupine attack to trick his parents and sprays water out of 30 holes in his body. I know this is far from the most sophisticated or expensive apparatus, but as we jump forward to, say, Pair of Kings, a prop this intricate would be completely unheard of. Returning to that timescale concept, we'll see that earlier Disney sitcoms have an endless number of sets, and later Disney sitcoms have claustrophobically few locations. Cory in the House is in the former category, with a good amount of location variety. They aren't big sets, but the quantity of them compensates for that. The White House is arguably the show's main location, specifically the kitchen and the Baxters' living quarters, which sit right next to each other and connect. The kitchen also leads directly into a stretch of White House hallway. There's apparently a front door to the White House in the Baxters' living quarters. We also semi-regularly see some sections of hallway, plus the Oval Office, with this occasionally used secret passageway. It's also seemingly retrofitted into a dining room on some occasions. The next space we spend a ton of time at is Washington Prep, which is a fairly run-of-the-mill Disney Channel school. Stairs that go nowhere up here. There's a nice courtyard which does connect to the hallway, and one classroom that's used interchangeably by all the various teachers, like this lady, or discount David Tennant.
Let's warm up with a simple thermodynamic equation!
A detail I found fascinating is a wall in the 6th episode, which is claimed to show alumni of the school.
As part of a great tradition here at Washington Preparatory Academy, we add the portrait of our new student body president, Newton Livingston III.
Portraits on the wall include Abraham Lincoln, Queen Elizabeth II, Prince Philip, Thurgood Marshall, Sonia Sotomayor, and Winston Churchill, all of whom, don't you forget this, graduated from an American prep school in Washington, D.C. And the exterior establishing shots for Washington Prep are actually John Marshall High School in Los Angeles, California, which was also used to represent the middle school in the unaired Gibby pilot.
A school bus full of children pulled up outside the school and interrupted my shoot. So I packed up my camera and I'm fleeing.
We also frequently see the library, which is the iconic juice bar with a stage on the right and a bar on the left. They work for a terrible, annoying man named Alexander.
When I see a drop of dew, it brings me back to thoughts of you and how you broke my heart in two.
And we see Newt's room, which has a direct connection to his house's backyard.
I also can't help but notice that the establishing shots used to represent Newt's house in the series are actually just the Dumbarton House in Washington, D.C. right behind me.
Cory in the House is one of the very, very first shows that I consciously remember watching. I was 5 years old when it premiered, and I entered kindergarten 9 months later. I was young, to the point that I couldn't understand that this wasn't the actual White House and the actual president. So, more than usual, I was being flashbanged with familiar imagery that triggered a lot of repressed memories. It was all of these little lines and snippets that I had no clue were still floating around in my subconscious.
Just say when.
When? When?
There's a small handful of things I explicitly remembered going in. Basically the entirety of the Wish Upon a Star episode, where Cory becomes the president and has to survive a robot uprising. We'll cover that soon.
Well, he did have a dream when he was president, right?
Yeah.
And he made the White House into his own personal playhouse.
I also vividly recalled Cory and Newt arguing about whether they're stuck in the floor or a ceiling.
Floor! Ceiling! Floor! Ceiling! Ceiling! Floor! Ah!
And a dramatic pan of a woman's legs, only to reveal it's Stickler. I didn't remember Stickler as a character, but I remember thinking this was the funniest thing I've ever seen. It actually happens twice in this episode. There's an episode where Sophie wants to cook for everyone, but her food sucks and no one has the heart to tell her. This prompted me to want to cook as a child, and I would put raw baby carrots, that tree shit, and the whitewashed broccoli in a pot of water and serve it to my parents and sister. It was some gourmet shit, only my mom pretended to like it. Another notably interesting episode is the 10th of season 1 titled Beat the Press, which loosely dives into President Martinez's strenuous relationship with the press corps. That being, he seems pretty fine with all of them, but Samantha takes great issue with the aggressive inquisition of reporter Michelle Wallace, Intense News.
Michelle Wallace, Intense News. What can you tell us about that nasty cough?
Oh, well, it's really more of a tickle, really.
Are you sure it's not an allergic reaction to, say, a sting from a killer bee?
Victor assigns Cory to run some throat-seething tea down to the president. Victor should know better than to give him this assignment. Cory tries to pawn his presidential bobbleheads off on the gathered members of the press before Samantha whisks him away. Michelle Wallace, Intense News, takes note of his presence and comes to visit him at school the next day to ask him about his role. Having advised the president on a remedy the night before, Cory boasts about being an advisor to the president. This quickly spins into a hit piece by the next morning.
Yeah, sure, I'll tell the president what to do.
Has President Martinez become a puppet with someone else pulling the strings? Tune in tonight for my shocking exclusive expose as I reveal the identity of the president's secret advisor.
Poor President Martinez is too stupid to identify that this very Cory-looking advisor could possibly be Cory.
If that story came from someone inside the White House, they'll be packing their bags so fast. Cory!
But everyone else figures it out. So they devise a scheme. Throughout the story, News convinced Mina to dress as an alien to film a music video for their hit band DC3. They use these costumes in a stage conversation within earshot of Michelle Wallace, Intense News, who's apparently doing her report in the White House press corps. Victor plays the part of General Store and reveals the government has just discovered video evidence of aliens. She swiftly steals the tape to show on air, superseding her originally planned scoop.
To even greater heights than before!
Sweet!
Of course, the video turns out to be Newt and Mina's new music video.
Everybody knows situations change, people drift away.
Michelle Wallace, Intense News, is swiftly informed that she's fired.
Apparently there's a fire. Oh, correction. I'm being fired.
Sources say his career is...
Everyone celebrates their stunning victory, and apparently nobody in America will ever ask any follow-up questions about this clearly ready-to-go expose on the Martinez administration. Now, you'd think a show set in the White House would be ripe for meaningful analysis. Unfortunately, trying to discern political meaning from Cory in the House is like trying to pull teeth from a duck. There's nothing here. There's considerably less than usual to work with and draw conclusions from. So the show's premise is kind of inherently political, but Disney obviously has a squeaky clean, non-controversial reputation to uphold. So were there any stories or jokes that you had wanted to do on Cory in the House, but you weren't allowed to do?
Well, there's the rub, as they say. We couldn't really do a political show. And we knew going in those were the ground rules. So it's not like we were frustrated every day, like, oh, we have so many great political statements to make. So the president was basically an idiot. Come down in the middle of the night and talk to Cory and get advice. But of course, he could never really talk about anything real, like, foreign relations or any kind of real political issue. So it was always some kind of silly, I don't even remember the specifics, but it was, I wouldn't say it was frustrating because we knew going in we couldn't really do it. So it was just the kind of outskirts of politics, let's say. We never really got into it too much.
So what is there? In the episode Rock the Vote, Martinez demonstrates the two-party system to Sophie's class using balloon animals.
The elephant is the symbol of the Republican Party, and this is a donkey. The symbol of the Democratic Party.
They reference the Secretary of State once.
I'm gonna go ask the Secretary of State to pull my finger.
In Monsters Ball, we see that President Martinez can apparently interrupt broadcasts at will.
We interrupt this program to bring you a message from the President of the United States.
Hello.
How dystopian, woo! I guess. Cory in the House only makes fleeting references to American history and culture, mainly by name-dropping presidents here and there.
This has been in the White House since President James Madison.
See, President Truman played the piano, President Clinton played the saxophone.
That was George Washington's table! Check out these plants.
What's so great about these plants?
Boy, you don't know? George Washington watered them.
same desk that President Rutherford B. Hayes brought to the White House in 1880. And President John F. Kennedy actually stood on this presidential seal. And Harry Truman looked out this window.
Hayes and Kennedy also looked out this window. Why did she single out Truman?
This is a portrait of President William H. Taft, the only president ever to get stuck in a White House bathtub. That is not a joke.
I genuinely believed this for most of my life. And earlier this summer, I was explicitly wondering, where did I learn that? Why did I think that? Then I rewatched this episode a couple months ago. This is where I learned it. The show takes a decidedly anti-press stance. They're consistently portrayed as vulturous, their questions conniving, and their doubts in the president depicted as negative. In the only other episode of the show to show the press corps, a rap by any other name, Samantha secretly uses a CIA chuckle button to make the press room laugh at Martinez's jokes, which is portrayed solely as a moral good within the story.
When activated, they changed the ionic balance in the room. They were developed to destabilize and embarrass our enemies by inducing hysterical laughter at inappropriate times.
But here's the thing. Do I think the press corps is evil? Is actually the opinion of the writers or the message they were trying to convey? I do not. I think that was the most effective vehicle for comedy. There are no real conclusions you can walk away with here. Like, say, Donald Davenport kidnapped these 3 children and make them to work for the government and abusively do his bidding against their will. That's a consistent subtextual undertone that Labrat and his creative team were clearly quite aware of. With Cory, I feel like the show had to work overtime to not have any political stance or message due to the potentially risky nature of its premise, leaving it very sanitized. Obviously, the show's not real, but let's say you had to assess the president. Which political party does President Martinez belong to?
I think he's a Whig.
I thought he would be in the Know Nothing Party. Remember them?
So probably a Democrat because that's. I think at that time, like I said, it was pre-Obama, so it was Bush time. But also, be more likely that the Democrats would nominate a minority president, but we never got into it.
I think that a show like this couldn't work today. For one, we have a populace that thinks far too negatively of the office of the presidency to really tolerate it being portrayed in a positive light anymore. Secondly, we live in such a polarized, contentious time that the idea of setting a show in Washington, D.C. without any messaging whatsoever is just utterly bizarre. And third, one of the central conceits of this series is that the president is an unprofessional goofball. By 2024, that is just reality. Howard Dean's entire campaign ended because he made a weird noise.
And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House! Yeah!
Donald Trump makes noises like that at every single rally he does. If you were to remove Kamala Harris from the context of all that is and all that came before and put her back in, say, 1972, then all of a sudden she's the least professional candidate of all time.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
You know what the issues are. You know that this is the clearest choice Americans have probably had for president in this century.
But our modern-day U.S. constituency has rejected professionalism, and the candidates have embraced this mentality to gain votes. The majority of Americans might love President Martinez to actually run for office, in contrast to the candidates that we're actually getting.
Yeah, they are kind of whack.
Wickety whack or straight up whack?
Straight up, sir.
Literally yesterday, Donald Trump posted this, and I really believe he genuinely posted that and clicked send with his own finger.
The actual resolution of the source image he uploaded is 534 by 345 pixels. It is so small. This is like a meme someone sent him in his 5th generation of being sent and compressed. He is an old man. Let's assume that Victor has remained the executive chef since 2007 and that Cory Baxter is still living in the White House to this day. What antics would Cory have gotten up to in the last 3 administrations?
He would have his own wing by then. If he was still around.
Well, he'd mess up Trump's tanning machine. I mean, that's right there where he just burns him to a crisp.
He incinerated him. That would be good. That would be good.
And he'd probably be confusing Biden, like switching out, like making little switches, like, changing his cup or something to drive him crazy.
Gaslighting the president could be a good episode.
I want you to imagine with me a hypothetical scenario in which everything that went wrong during the Donald Trump administration was caused by a 15-year-old living in the White House who Donald Trump was inexplicably really fond of and just refused to kick out. Like, let's say it's Barron, okay? Barron's talking to Trump with an earpiece, and Trump's parroting everything Barron says, but then Barron accidentally gets distracted and starts talking about injecting bleach. Boom, scandal.
Dang, dog, you stink!
Dang, dog, you stink!
Excuse me?
Barron accidentally gets his homework confused with some presidential documents, and he puts the wrong papers in Trump's backpack. Boom, scandal. You would not believe the misunderstanding that led to January 6th.
A couple weeks ago, I released an extensive Gravity Falls documentary investigating the Cypher Hunt, the insane global scavenger hunt to find a statue of Bill Cipher after the show ended. I worked on it almost every day for 4 months, traveled to 20 locations, and interviewed 40 participants, including series creator Alex Hirsch. And then YouTube didn't show it to anyone. I just got texts all week being like, whoa, I never got any recommendation for this. I think I just uploaded it too late at night, and I screwed myself. I genuinely think this is the best work I've ever done, and so many people are commenting that too. Please watch my video. Please watch my video. Also, if you join my Patreon right now, you can vote on what retrospective's next, Pair of Kings or Casey Undercover. And if my channel reaches 1 million subscribers within 5 minutes of this video's upload, I will assassinate the sitting president of a randomly selected country. In a mall of confusion, President Martinez struggles to find the perfect anniversary gift for his wife Elizabeth in her one appearance, in which she doesn't even interact with her own daughter. Wait, where was she when Sophie was riding her bike? Anyway, he wants to buy her a specific perfume. He doesn't remember the name, but he'd know it by smell. Cory's looking for an opportunity to buy the new hit game, Rap Ninja 2, which is so exclusive that not even the president could help him get it.
Even I don't have that kind of hookup.
So Cory takes Martinez to the mall, wearing a mustache as a disguise.
Cory, I don't know about this. Sneaking out with no security, what if somebody recognizes me?
Sir, I promise you, I've got your back.
Also, this mall, supposedly in Washington, D.C., is the Pasadena Plaza Mall in Pasadena, California, which I cannot go visit because it was demolished in 2001. Cory sneaks off to buy the game. The president totally could have arranged for Cory to get this, given they're sold at retail, actually. Tragically, he's intercepted by Stickler, who incapacitates him using his CIA retractable oil slick. Amazing shit. Stickler whips out his CIA temporary memory loss spray, but accidentally rolls towards the president during a scuffle. He sprays it while testing perfumes and completely forgets his identity. As it happens, a man in the mall named Bert happens to look exactly like President Martinez with the mustache. Becky pulls Bert aside for a shift at Cheese in a Cup during lunch rush, while Cory brings Bert back to the White House. There are antics on both sides. Bert kisses the First Lady, who screams. President Martinez is terribly unskilled.
So I'm the assistant manager of Cheese in a Cup.
The spray begins to wear off, and he remembers his identity.
I'm the president!
This prompts the entire congregation to excitedly chase him around the mall. I love the idea of the general public having nothing but love and glowing adoration for the president and chasing him around like a pop star. I also want to point out something that confused me as a child. That being, there are multiple other episodes where President Martinez goes out in public and no one finds him even remotely interesting. Cory ultimately convinces Bert to shave his mustache and take the fall for Martinez, who's able to escape. Everyone informs Cory that this is his fault. There's also an episode with a similar premise in which President Martinez's mother comes to the White House to smother him rather than his wife. In the B story, Mina teaches Sophie a Bahavian dance called the Patushka, and Sophie comes to see her as a sister. This is the beginning of a sweet but scarcely used character dynamic between them. That is to say, I think this is one of 2 episodes their bond is featured in. But goddammit, this show has passed the Bechdel test. God bless America. Sophie's school is Bellarmine Jefferson High School in Burbank, California.
I had to run across a crosswalk.
Something I found myself surprised by is mainstream internet terms and culture materializing in this show from 2007.
How you know my name, bruh?
That your father works in a kitchen that was built in 1817?
Yeah, but it really didn't start cooking till I got there.
She aight. Man, she really hyping us up big time.
Although I probably shouldn't be surprised, because a lot of the modern internet lexicon does stem from black culture. Like woke, for instance, used to mean stay alert, but it was sort of assimilated into a catch-all term that somehow means everything, yet really nothing at all. I think it boils down to this: as black Americans get more of a platform and more influence, their vernacular starts seeping into the mainstream consciousness and adapting into wider use. And that is why 12-year-olds say bruh.
How about you get us some more rolls, bruh?
Speaking of, the show exists in this era where the internet was a nebulous, abstract concept and a lot of things are very dated, like flip phones, chunky computers, and the cell phone plans with texting limits.
You get free texting?
My favorite example of the writers not quite getting how technology practically works, but getting the spirit of it, is when, during a live video call with Cory, with this very large mute button, Sophie downloads the call to the disk as a file live, while the call is happening, just by clicking a button. You know, close enough. The 14th episode, No No Nanoosh, marks an interesting reset point for the show. In it, Mina excitedly enters a competition to sing on stage with and kiss her favorite Bahavian pop star Nanoosh. Let me reiterate, this is a contest for a teenage fan to kiss him on live TV. Also, but a mere 9 episodes later, we learn of a world-famous Bahavian ball walker named Janusz. So Nina's thrilled with the opportunity and Cory's dreading the idea of her meeting someone else.
Well, in Bahavia, it is traditional to have a postcard for a contest, sweepstakes, or lottery be mailed by a well-intentioned friend who is pure of heart.
Well, that's a pretty specific tradition.
On that note, how has this one-sided crush fared?
Just a kiss for good luck?
Well, if you insist.
Compared to the pantheon of other series I've covered on this channel, actually pretty damn well. Sure, he tries to sabotage her relationships and manipulate her.
Well, maybe I should just go up to him and be friendly.
No, wrong. Worst thing you can do.
Then he threatens her.
I know if you don't get on that stage, then you're out of the band. Yeah.
But compared to Oliver, or Cody Martin, or Mason Graybeck, Cory's chill. In all seriousness, those instances are outliers. He really is kind to her the majority of the time. In this story, he has the idea to lose her application to the concert, but doesn't actually have the heart to go through with it. Nanoosh announces Mina as the contest winner. Cory wants to prevent her from kissing him and devises a scheme, which requires looping Newt into his feelings for her. He hasn't known this whole show.
Do you mean all those times you used to gaze at her and melt when she talked to you and smell the air as she walked by? You had a crush on her?
In the B story, President Martinez has given Becky a job in the White House kitchen, and an unspoken bit of continuity after he worked for her in Mall of Confusion. Unfortunately, she annoys the rest of the staff to the point that they quit. She severely injures Chef Baxter, and she only knows how to cook cheese in a cup. Fortunately, the Queen of England is blown away by the elegant simplicity of this meal, and all's well that ends well. They sneak into the venue impersonating Bahavian moop moop players, the moop moop being this lovely instrument. Inside, they aren't able to reach Mina, but it's okay. Nanoosh reveals he's a diabolical son of a gun, isn't he? Turns out that Nanoosh simply called Mina's name as a means to game his way into connection to her father, Bahavian Ambassador Perum, who has the means to land him an American record contract. Mina calls him out and exposes him as a fraud on live TV. She returns to Cory outside.
I don't want to think about crushes or love or relationships for a long, long time. Right now, I'm just happy that I have my friends. Especially you.
Yeah. Our friendship means a lot to me, too.
Thank you, Cory. And you're sweet, and you're kind, and you really care about me.
It's here that Cory decides he's over his feelings for Mina. He's perfectly content with just being friends with her. And believe it or not, this sticks. There is not a single subsequent episode where Cory exhibits feelings for Mina. It was abruptly eliminated from the series, not even halfway through. Cory teaches small idiot children a valuable lesson here. He is the anti-Cody, truly. I'm curious, what prompted Cory to abruptly get over Mina and end that kind of recurring storyline?
Well, generally in kid shows, it's very hard to have long relationships. Because where do you go? When kids are 12, 13 years old, in real life, a relationship progresses and it gets physical and deeper. But with these kid shows, these Disney shows especially, we couldn't go there. So we have to keep it open to bring people in and out. So anything dating or relationship-wise, it was it was cute and it was okay, but we didn't know where to take it. You know, we couldn't make it a 3-year relationship. That cuts down all the stories of her dating and him dating and, you know, bringing in other people for them. So I guess he had a crush. I don't really even remember that part, but we knew we'd be going to the friend zone with them.
Well, we had good track record with Friends. On Full House, it was 2 girls and a boy. On Raven, 2 girls and a guy. This one, it was 2 guys and a girl. And we figured if Mina is a friend, they could have a lot more adventures without getting mixed up. That's why we brought on other love interests. We had Candy, who came in, and that was an up and down relationship, and we had fun with that. But as Mark said, you can't stretch it out too long. After they kiss, what's next? You know, we don't want to know. We don't want to know.
As alluded to by Dennis, Cory getting over Mina allows him access to a new roster of love interests, chief among them Candy Smiles. Candy is a character introduced very early in the show, whose characterization and narrative purpose actually develop a lot. She starts as a very preppy class pet, competing for class president against Newt. But she isn't as antagonistic to the main characters as you expect for this sort of character archetype.
If we can't bring the people to the pep, or bring the pep to the people.
In the earlier episode Smells Like School Spirit, Cory decides to join the cheer team to spend more time with Mina, faking his school spirit to appease her. This happens to catch the attention of Candy, who develops a crush on him. Cory doesn't have the heart to tell her that he's not interested, so he goes along with the relationship until she eventually inevitably finds out and angrily pushes him on a gurney down the hallway of the school, where he rolls uncontrollably for several consecutive minutes. This is another sequence I had a really strong memory of going in. In the end, Cory apologizes by paying off the entire school to sing the school's pep theme.
What was the one where Cory was strapped to some gurney in the school and he's going down a flight of stairs, and what was that one again? School Spirit? Maybe that was about School Spirit.
Yeah, that was funny.
That was a funny one.
I wish that I had been able to go back and look at some of the episodes, because a lot of it is really starting to fade away.
Come over to my house tonight. We'll have a Cory party, get in our pajamas and watch 35 episodes.
That sounds like fun.
After Cory gets over Mina, Candy shifts into being his primary love interest, as the two of them on again, off again date from episode to episode.
You know, go to the dance with me.
I'd love to, Cory.
Really? Great. So, why don't we walk away as a couple?
Their last interaction was her pushing him down a staircase.
Now let's go discover fire.
She continuously refers to him as Sea Bear.
Sea Bear?
And I'm wondering if that draws back to her first episode where she watched him fight to the death with Freddy Fazbear.
You know how I yabba dabba do.
In order to maintain a big component of the show's story engine, Stickler immediately gets over Mina as soon as Cory does and develops a crush on Candy.
Candy Smiles. You know, I like a girl with her own tape gun.
You just like her because I like her.
Yeah? So?
This allows Cory to keep his involuntary celibate rival, and continues to serve as the fuel for their conflict going forward. Season 1, Episode 15, Air Force 1-2 Mini, is the iconic episode where Cory gives Alaska back to the Russians and wins it back in the dance battle. It starts when Cory is getting his ass whipped by Sophie in the new game Step Step Party Tech, casually in the Oval Office of the White House. Sophie whips out her new move, the Sophie Shuffle, and Cory's utterly incapable of keeping up. Enter President Martinez and Russian Prime Minister Shuzov, who've just had some tense interactions after Shuzov wanted Martinez's jacket and Martinez wouldn't give it to him. Martinez allows Cory and Sophie to watch as he unearths a piece of history, the original deed to Alaska.
It used to be owned by Russia, and then the United States bought it back in 1867.
Now that was a deal. Man, we made millions off discovering gold, silver.
Shuzov mistakes this interaction as Martinez returning Alaska, which leads to further tension when he asks for it back. During a moment when they've left the room, Cory puts on the president's jacket and messes around with the deed. When he hears the world leaders returning and he can't open the box, he hastily shoves the deed to Alaska in the jacket's pocket, this being mere moments before President Martinez gives Prime Minister Shuzov the jacket as a gesture of goodwill between their nations. Desperate to get the deed back, Cory sneaks aboard Air Force One, Special guest star George Takei serves as Air Force One's in-flight chef.
Oh my!
Who's strictly instructed by Chef Victor to reheat some clams for 10 minutes before bringing them out. During extreme turbulence, Cory accidentally stops the microwave before 10 minutes of reheating. After failed attempts to retrieve the deed, Martinez even getting roped into the scheme after a while.
Hey, sleepyhead.
Prime Minister Shoes-Off learns of its presence in his pocket and refuses to return it. When Martinez is immobilized by severe diarrhea due to the underheated clams, it's up to Cory to get Alaska back. He challenges Shoes-Off to a game of step-step party tech to get it back. Unfortunately, it turns out he's been duped, as Shoes-Off has the all-time high score in this game.
Dang, I didn't know you could score that high.
Cory, beginning to lose badly, takes advice from Sophie to whip out the Sophie Shuffle, which he deploys in the 11th hour to win the game, save the day, and retrieve Alaska. Everyone is happy and hugs.
Oh, do I get like a medal for this?
Oh, yes, you do. The invisible medal of
So, from this point forward, it's important to acknowledge this is easily the best episode of Cory in the House. The sheer absurdity of this premise takes full advantage of the canvas the series provided in a way too few episodes have. But this also isn't even the halfway point of the show. After Air Force One Too Many, the series rapidly runs out of steam. It largely stops taking advantage of the central hook, a teenager causing chaos near the presidency. And the handful of episodes that still do it just fail to hold a candle to this one. Oh no, Cory spilled ink on the presidential seal. It's just incredibly underwhelming when we've already seen him give away Alaska. This was just too good of an episode too early in the show's run, because nothing will ever hold a candle to this again. Although the next episode comes pretty damn close. The Cory in the House episode that I best remembered and was most excited to watch is Gone Wishin', which aired as part of the Wish Gone to Miss weekend, which saw Zach and Cody, Miley Stewart, and Cory Baxter wish on the same shooting star across 3 episodes of their series. In it, Cory's ordered to remove a tray of pies from the oven in 20 minutes. With 20 minutes to kill, he bottles water from the White House sink and sells it to tour groups, unfortunately missing the timer when it goes off.
And what kind of tacky business scheme is this?
Listen, I'm sorry, I only had 20 minutes. I'm sure they're still delicious.
A staff meeting with no pie at the end is like a staff meeting.
After getting chastised, Cory and his friends are at school in the middle of the night because it's the show's only outdoor set and that's the only location this production could use as a setting for its shooting star. Cory suddenly awakes to find himself
the President of the United States.
After kids got the right to vote, Cory won in a landslide and absolutely dripped out the White House. Cory is introduced to his button. No further elaboration is given.
That's a good one, sir. Like you don't know what your button does.
Cory addresses the nation.
My fellow Americans. It sounds good.
That was the entire speech. He uses the extra time to sell bobbleheads to the American people. Cory has taken ample opportunity to monetize every single solitary aspect of the White House.
I pledge my allowance to President Cory Baxter and Cory Baxter Enterprises, and to his wallet for which we fill.
And on your left is the Lincoln Bedroom Gift Shop. On your right is the Blue Room Gift Shop, which brings us back to the historical Hall of Gift Shops. And by the way, we're having a little problem with the soda machine, sir. It's not giving back change.
And the problem is?
Samantha gave Cory a file to read earlier in the episode, which he just didn't care to do. Vice President Sophie was assigned to read it. And by the way, this is one of the only 2 instances where Vice President ever gets said in this entire series. The other is when Sophie gets elected a Vice President of her elementary school class.
You made me Vice President. Which means... if anything might happen to the president...
Sophie!
Did we ever show a Vice President or mention it? I don't think so.
No, you never showed one at all.
We never did. Just like real life.
It turns out the file Cory's been ignoring warns of magnetic alien robots who have invaded the country. and because Cory's brushed it aside, is too late to prepare. They take over the White House, they chase Cory and Sophie into the Oval Office. Sophie is able to take control of the army as she stages a political coup so she can become the president.
Yes, Cory, yes, Cory, yes, my button!
Faced with no other options, Cory presses his button, which completely undoes the events of the entire episode and takes him back to the shooting star, where he wishes for things to stay the same forever. The end. Zack and Cody genuinely at the most peak episode of all time during Wish Gone and Miss weekend, and this one stands toe to toe with it. It's so funny. Besides Gone Wishin', Cory in the House only had one other crossover with the broader Disney Channel universe, that being the 8th episode of Hannah Montana's 2nd season titled Take This Job and Love It, which saw President Martinez and Sophie meet pop star Hannah Montana. Hannah becomes fed up with her bodyguard Roxy after she embarrasses her on a date. The president brings Sophie to meet Hannah Montana after a concert because Sophie's a huge fan.
As leader of the free world, may I say your concert was off the hook and you were the bomb.
When Roxy's able to save the president from eating bad sushi and Martinez is impressed with her, Miley's able to pawn Roxy off to become the president's bodyguard. Unfortunately, she soon comes to miss Roxy and tries to sneak in to get her back. Unfortunately, the Hannah Montana-obsessed Sophie restrains her to her room, and her Secret Service go along with it. Miley and Lily decide to switch costumes, as Lily stays in Sophie's room dressed as Hannah, and Miley sneaks into the president's quarters, where Martinez mistakes her for a dog whisperer he hired to help his sickly dog Humphrey. Antics ensue. Miley has to eat the dog food. President Martinez also abuses the office of his presidency and offers a bribe.
And I'm not asking as the president, I'm asking as a loving dog owner who can get you a ride on Air Force One.
Roxy returns to working for Miley, and President Martinez calls the dog hot.
And we're going to be spending a lot more time together, starting now. Come on, buddy. I saw a French poodle in the lobby, and she's quite the hottie. Come on. Come on.
Also, the Hannah Montana episode has the sole reference to Martinez as vice president.
And he's sadder than the vice president when he heard I passed my physical.
Because the clandestine liberal deep state has removed Cory in the House from Disney Plus since they don't want us knowing its secrets, this is currently the only legal method for Americans to see President Martinez, our nation's true leader.
You know, it's hard because these episodes are not on Disney Channel. Cory in the House they don't run it. So some of the other shows we've done, you can feel nostalgic once in a while. You know, we go back and watch a Raven or Full House or all those shows. But you can't really. So we haven't seen these or really thought about them for quite a while.
Yeah, we're banned from the Disney Plus. I don't know.
I saw that. It's hard to find the show.
Yeah, it is. It's very hard.
And people did like it. We did have a lot of fans, and people ask about it all the time. But it's not accessible right now.
What's interesting is that despite the presence of Humphrey, who's only in like 3 episodes of the actual show, and the continuation of Cory in the House's running gags,
for the President of the United States,
America's angel. He's the President of the United States, America's angel.
This is the President of the United States.
Mark and Dennis claim to have had no involvement in this. There was one minor crossover with Cory in the House, and that was President Martinez and Sophie appearing on an episode of Hannah Montana. And did you guys have any involvement in that episode?
No, that one was 0. But we did bring Raven back onto Cory in the House. Probably our highest rated episode, Raven, or anything with Jason Dolley. When he was featured, that we used to bump the ratings up too.
It was only a matter of time before Raven Simone made an appearance. Episode 16 is called That's So in the House, which sees Raven Baxter visit Washington, D.C.
Raven? Yeah. Hey, how fast can you get to Washington?
Is this fast enough?
I like that seemingly anyone can enter and exit the White House at will. Like fucking Stickler waltzes in sometimes. There's a doorbell in one episode. There are metal detectors stationed outside Sophie's bedroom door, but clearly not outside the White House itself because Stickler smuggles in the most suspicious CIA technology ever. Anyway, when President Martinez wants to invest in a new tour guide uniform, fashion designer Raven is hooked up with the position through nepotism. Walking the halls with Cory, she suddenly has a vision of an out-of-control floor buffer. which is going to strike a grandfather clock that will collapse and land on the president. Thinking this accident seconds away from happening, Raven leaps onto Martinez, only to be branded as a White House kook and deemed public enemy number 1.
I was attacked by some kook. I'll never forget that face, that voice, those wild eyes.
Wild eyes? The president better say that to my face.
Now with an imminent meeting between Raven and the president to show off her wardrobe, Raven and Cory transition the objective of their operation. Cory will pose as his sister, who herself will watch from the rose garden while dressed as a landscaper.
So, you're Chef Victor's beautiful daughter. Well, I guess there's nothing stronger than a father's love.
Yeah, this was 2007. Newt, who's been questioning the possibility of love at first sight, finds himself falling head over heels for Cory, not recognizing him. While the presentation goes well, Raven's ultimately exposed outside the window, prompting a lengthy cartoonist chase between her and the entire Secret Service deployment.
It's the kook! Get her!
I'm okay!
Raven's home. Yeah, let's go.
Racing back into the White House, which wasn't locked down, she finds herself alone with the president without Secret Service to protect him from the falling grandfather clock, as her vision finally comes true. She spends about a minute on top of him on the floor.
So you're the beautiful Raven.
That's me.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, this was 2007. There she confesses to him that she's psychic, which she finds mildly interesting and doesn't inquire about further.
I'm psychic.
Interesting. Stick to pants, son.
Yeah, this was 2007.
Dude, this is, I may have said some things.
Donna the tour guide insists there's no need for new uniforms because there's no sense in undoing tradition. Cory's attempts to negotiate are shot down.
We're the people too, right?
That's right.
Any of you kids old enough to vote?
No.
Well, the people have spoken.
I like the show pretending Raven Simone is under 18 years of age. Having accomplished nothing, Raven goes home. In 2005, it was announced that Raven Simone would star in an adaptation of Meg Cabot's novel All-American Girl as this character named Samantha Madison who saves the president from an assassination attempt. And that movie fell apart, but when Raven later guest starred in a Cory in the House episode called Ravens in the House, she saves the president. Was this an intentional connection?
That's right.
Absolutely not. No.
No.
Okay.
No, we just got lucky on that one. What happened? I think a grandfather clock was going to fall on the president, and she knew it was going to happen, and she jumped in at the last second.
Despite the vast network of characters across 4 seasons of That's So Raven, there are very few who reprised their roles in Cory in the House. The first season only sees 2 traditional returning characters, only one of whom was a credited actor. The first instance is a few episodes before Raven. Cory's bully, the Juicer.
The Juicer! The Juicer! The Juicer!
Played by Dan Mott, who was introduced in the 4th season of That's So Raven as a 4-time recurring character. The Juicer can crush anything so hard that it turns into juice, and it's very, very funny.
Oh my. Imagine what he can do to your head.
Juicer decides to torment Cory during a Washington, D.C. trip during his 5th consecutive year of 7th grade. The Juicer pressures Cory into turning his DC 3 gig into a surprise birthday party for him, but Cory's too embarrassed to tell Newt and Mina he's getting bullied, so they're increasingly baffled and frustrated by his last-minute demands.
Is your friend's birthday more important than our band?
But I'm putting my foot down. The weenie stops here.
The Juicer is ultimately so impressed by Cory standing up to him that he turns a new leaf and stops being a bully. Even though Cory stood up to him before, but this is the end, this is his send-off. Goodbye, Juicer. The second familiar face is Cory's pet rat Lionel, who appeared intermittently throughout the original series.
Lionel! That is Lionel! Lionel!
When Cory's friends are weirded out by Lionel and Lionel publicly shits on his shoulder, he gives him to Sophie. Under Sophie's ownership, Lionel transitions into Jasmine, and Cory is not an ally.
And I want him back.
Her name is now Jasmine.
I gotta go find Lionel.
Jasmine!
Whatever.
After Sophie accidentally lets Jasmine escape her cage and run amok inside the briefing room, she sees how much Cory cares about her. So she renounces her allyship as well and gives Lionel back to Cory.
You really love him, and he really loves you.
We never see Lionel again. In my opinion, they ate him. Beyond that, there's a brief reference to Cory's best friend Larry, who was played by David Henry, often in That's So Raven.
Luckily, I was able to juice it out of your weenie friend, Larry.
Is that Larry in there? He was so young.
And the show occasionally makes a loving reference to Cory's mom, Tanya Baxter, who disappeared from That's So Raven entirely after season 3 while Takia Crystal Kima cared for her sick grandmother. The in-show explanation was that she was studying law abroad.
Can't wait to call your mom and tell her about this.
My mama wrote that for camp.
Beyond returning faces to That's So Raven, only one episode of the show features a special guest star from mainstream pop culture.
Excuse me.
The hierarchy of power in the Disney Channel universe is about to change. In season 1's finale, Never the Dwayne Shall Meet, Dwayne Johnson is coming to visit the White House to advise the president about a fitness program, and the entire main cast gush for 22 minutes about just how cool he is.
Remember, he is just a person.
No, you're just a person.
You guys in?
As long as I get to meet the Rock.
Yeah, the Rock rocks.
Cory plans to pitch and sell what is basically an exercise vending machine to him.
You can work your deltoids, your trapezoids, and your freakazoids.
But while pushing it out of the way to avoid detection, he, Newt, and Mina get trapped in a closet. Samantha wants to marry The Rock, Victor thinks The Rock looks just like him, and Martinez wants to establish Hollywood connections to fall back on being a film star if being the president doesn't work out. Unfortunately, they fall into a secret passageway, and they're also trapped in this closet with Cory. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson enters the White House, can't find the president, and decides to have a tea party with Sophie, who he found all alone.
America's angel.
That's what they call me.
This episode seemingly also served as backdoor marketing for the Disney movie The Game Plan, which starred The Rock alongside Madison Pettis as a football player who learns of his biological daughter he never knew he had. Was this episode of Cory in the House kind of like a marketing vehicle for that movie, or was it a coincidence?
I don't remember specifically, but I'm sure it was.
Well, for us, it was a problem because all of a sudden we're starting production and we're getting going and we hear, oh, Madison's going to be out for a couple of months. She's doing a movie with The Rock.
She was in a movie with The Rock before we started, so we had to do production a bit. He's a football player. She comes to his house, and it's his daughter. He never met. He has to raise her.
And they kept calling her away to like reshoot scenes, and they were messing with our schedule. It was problematic for us. But I think we said, how about asking if The Rock will be on our show? I think it came from us because we felt like, come on, do us a favor. We rescheduled everything for you guys. I think that's how it worked out.
Cory and his friends managed to shove the blockage out of the closet door, only for The Rock to use his massive muscles to shove it back into place.
It's hurting time.
That's a good catchphrase, sir.
That's not a catchphrase, son. It's hurting time.
No one gets to see The Rock except for Sophie. Then they continue to reminisce about how cool and famous he is.
He was fantastic. He was just a wonderful guy, cooperative, did everything we wanted, took pictures with everyone. That was a fun episode.
It was a little intimidating. He came in, he's so big and he's so powerful. And he starts to do the scenes, and we want to give him some suggestions. But how do you go up to The Rock and ask him to be funnier? You know, so like he does a tea party with Madison Pettis, and he has to sit down at a little table and chair, and he sits down with her. And so we said gently, you know, you're a giant guy, and there's this tiny little chair. Maybe you could have a little more fun with you trying to fit into that big chair. He said, okay, I'll do it. I got an idea. And he went for it. So once you saw that, you realize he was up for anything. He was very cooperative and fun to work with.
And with that exit, the first season of Cory in the House draws to a close.
The second season of Cory in the House received 13 episodes, which were slowly rolled out over the course of a full year during increasingly awkward time slots like a dog with his tail between his legs wanting to avoid being seen by his owners, from November 17, 2007 to September 12, 2008. For the most part, the show is the same. There are no radical shifts in direction to point to, no overarching storylines, but there are a few subtle differences in the second season. A few patterns that stick out to me, such as Lisa Arch barely appearing as Samantha Samuels anymore with only 4 episodes to her name. To rip the band-aid right off, I think the second season is where the show runs out of steam. I found myself very bored while watching its episodes, and there are several reasons I can point to. For one, the show largely stops taking advantage of its presidential premise. As season 1 plowed on, there were fewer and fewer stories which took advantage of the fact that Cory Baxter lives in the White House. In the second season, they're few and far between. The first episode of the series established that Cory and Victor have a direct Batman 66-style hotline to the president, but is only used once after that in the 6th episode and never appears again. It's emblematic of how the show treated its premise in general. In addition, season 1 rarely had B stories, but season 2 frequently does, creating the impression that it was harder and harder for these stories to sustain themselves for a full 22 minutes. By season 2, it's rare to see stories about Cory causing chaos in the White House, which was the entire central premise of the first season. Rather, Cory's storylines are more focused on Washington Prep and DC 3, who are trying to achieve a blow-up-tuation.
Blow-up-tuation. Blow-up-tuation. The blow-up-tuation. Blow-up-tuate.
Blow-up-tuate. There's also a far larger emphasis on Cory's love life and his dysfunctional relationship with Candy. Entire episodes and storylines are set at the school, making you wonder why the show is called Cory in the House when he's never at said titular house.
Yeah, they probably did some research or something and found they kind of steered us more towards making it a kid and a school show rather than and rightfully so, I think, that because if we couldn't really do political stuff and it just kind of wore itself out. You know, we kind of reached the end of the rope with that, with White House stuff. And also, it was much more relatable to kids to watch kids at school and see them go through the normal school stuff. That's why, like, Raven had, even though it had the psychic element, you had a home, you had a little brother, you had a mother and a father, and then you had a whole school element. It generated a lot of stories just out of real life. Whereas Cory, we had to make up a lot of stuff. We didn't really know what it was like in the White House, or there's nothing really organic about it. So a lot of the stories maybe come off as a little forced or a little silly. And maybe that's not a bad thing. I don't know, but it was more challenging to break stories for Cory than for Raven.
Yeah, I mean, how many relatable stories in the White House? He didn't have like a real family going on there, and with family problems, but school problems we could all relate to. So we pushed toward that.
I mean, Madison kind of became the little sister, and so they did have kind of a sibling relationship. And then I know we did a few things. We went to her school and followed that storyline a little bit for her because she was great. We really tried to utilize her, but it was challenging.
You know, how many times can you destroy the presidential seal? You know, one per series.
As Mark indicated, Sophie also leads storylines in the second season. Much like J.T. Austin in Wizards Waverly Place, Madison Pettis was given more screen time as she grew older and was allowed to work more on-set hours as a child actor, going from a supporting character with a few scenes per episode in the first season to leading storylines in the second season. Whereas the first season tended to have full 22-minute stories, the second season usually has an A-B structure, with Cory leading the A-plot and Sophie leading the B-plot. This reduces the capacity for them to interact, and in my opinion, that is not in the show's favor because Sophie functions best when she's a thorn in Cory's side. Her storylines aren't really taking advantage of the show's premise either. It's usually just drama in her class at school, rather than leaning into the fact that her father is the President of the United States, as we'll discuss more soon.
I think another factor in the show's limitations is that the main cast is so removed from each other. Normally, in a sitcom, you'd be able to pair any of the 6 main characters with any other. Like in Good Luck Charlie, the mom can have a story with the sons, or the dad can have a story with the mom. In Cory in the House, How could you really justify President Martinez or Chef Victor hanging out with Newt or Mina? I think Martinez interacts with Newt only twice in the whole show. If you were to make a chart documenting who knows who, green indicating they get paired up together for stories, red indicating they don't, there's a lot of red here. I gave Sophie a yellow connection to Cory's friends because she only has 2 storylines with Mina and 1 storyline with Newt, in which she develops a crush on him very early in the first season.
You and I are getting married.
We are?
Mm-hmm. And we're gonna have a big house with a swimming pool, a garden, and a moon balance.
Moon bounce? That's awesome!
Things look even worse when you add Samantha and Stickler to the chart. Samantha has no reason to interact with the school side of the story, and Stickler has no reason to interact with the presidential side. Now compare this to Sweet Life, where everyone knew each other and everyone could be and were paired together for stories. I think there was a shallower well of inspiration to draw from when writing episodes, because the premise in and of itself has limited potential for character crossover with how compartmentalized the 2 sides of the story are.
I keep hearing an ice cream truck. Imagine if that's what the presidential motorcade sounds like. Stickler's function changes during the second season. Without the mutual crush on Mina to serve as the conflict between Cory and Stickler, Stickler actually shifted to more of an occasional ally, a trend which started when they temporarily teamed up during Mall of Confusion.
Baxter, I know we've had our differences in the past, but we're on this mission together, so I've got your back.
Hey guys, what's going on?
You're on your own, Baxter. Dang!
Stickler shows up as a member of the friend group just as often as he shows up as a chaos agent.
What's up, my dogs? Can I get a what? What? Oh, thanks.
Overall, though, he's still not trustworthy, and he's eager to abandon and backstab Cory whenever he gets the opportunity.
Well, you know what they say, 3's a crowd.
Did Stickler just reference Transformers Animated Season 3, Episode 4, written by Rich Fogel? With a B plot in which the Autobots capture Lugnup but struggle the movement, which was written in an uncredited capacity by story editor Marty Eisenberg, giving the original subplot of Bumblebee transwarping around the galaxy, getting rolled into season 4 season 3 Transwarp. The third season is by the law, but I'm Stream Transformers Animated on the Tubi streaming app! Season 2 kicks off with the presidential seal.
With the gradual dynamic shifts established, let's discuss the incredibly brief second season of Cory in the House.
Newt, man, you know what we need? We need girlfriends.
Who starts a conversation like that?
Cory develops a crush on his classmate named Nicole, who is not interested. He decides to circumvent her lack of interest by telling her he lives at the White House, which completely changes her mind. Sophie sneaks him inside the Oval Office, but Cory accidentally spills James Madison's inkwell on the presidential seal and has to desperately clean it before Martinez arrives with the Japanese Prime Minister. After Cory has a fantasy of being strapped to a rocket and launched into space as a punishment for his sins, Mina offers a Bahavian gargling cleaning solution, while Newt opts to simply replace it.
One presidential seal.
This is the only time the title of an episode is said within an episode. Every single episode's title is a pun, but it's weird to hear one of the characters say the pun. They should have titled this like Seal the Deal or something, I don't know. The episode and season also introduced a goofy new White House transition. Before this, we'd always just cut to stock footage of DC and transitions between locations. Now the episode basically shifts its premise midway through as everyone changes old Slappy the Seal through the White House. It slides into the Oval Office, and they have to escape before President Martinez sees them.
And who's this?
Slappy.
Dang!
She's my tiny little be-whisker great aunt from Bahavia.
She's very shy.
I'm congested.
Just a moment, Mr. Prime Minister.
The funny thing about this is if they were to just reveal they had a seal here, I genuinely don't think Martinez would care at all. He would be completely chill with Cory bringing a seal into his office.
I'm sorry, sir. I had no idea they'd be in here.
Sophie said it was okay. Yeah, she wanted to play on the big screen.
No problem, son.
They almost escape scot-free until Chef Baxter enters with $50,000 sushi for the Prime Minister, which old Slappy abandons his disguise to eat. Cory is grounded forever, basically, and he reluctantly tells Nicole as much. She's very impressed because no guy has ever gone through so much trouble to impress her, yada yada. Although the episode ends with Cory longing for her, we never see her again. Cory even gets his phone back within a few episodes, and yet seemingly loses all interest in or memory of this relationship. Frankly, this feels like a story that may have well been written with Candy in mind, with a last-minute character swap out due to Jordan Elizabeth not being available or something, given Nicole's near-identical nerdiness and preppiness. Believe it or not, this is the final episode of the series that revolves around Cory causing chaos around the office of the presidency. The stories are just like A-plot, Cory does male modeling. B-plot, Sophie worries about a father-daughter dance. A-plot, Cory has to go back and forth between a date with Mina and an event with Stickler he was blackmailed into participating in. B-plot, Sophie runs for class office. From here on, there's not a single episode where Cory and the president are involved in the same half of each episode's two subplots. And in my opinion, that is for the worse. In Through the Roof, Alexander bursts into Newt's home uninvited during band rehearsal. This is the home of a US Senator and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He deems that because DC3 only has 4 songs, they need to write a new one by the end of the day, or else they'll be fired as the semi-regular alternate fill-in house band at the Library Juice Bar. I haven't spoken much about Alexander, but he sounds like this. And I hate him. He regularly yells at some guy named Sebastian. There's also one episode that introduces his twin brother.
That's right. Oh. Nathaniel? Y'all are twins?
He's 2 minutes older.
A lot can happen in 2 minutes.
Alexander then deems he will spend the day playing in Newt's backyard. The backyard of a US Senator and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. I like that No Noosh hinge on the fact that Ambassador Perum has connections to the American records industry, yet DC3 simultaneously has no other employment options besides working for Alexander while getting paid in juice. A situation Perum is fully aware of, but not doing anything to help with. Nepotism doesn't exist.
Does he think he's the only guy that'll hire us?
Actually, Alexander is the only guy that'll hire us.
The gang struggles to brainstorm. Mina is unable to help write the song because she has to go lead Sophie's Sunshine Girls unit in the B-plot, where they don't want to learn anything. Shortly after this, Madison Pettis would go on to voice Fireside Girl Addison in Phineas and Ferb, where she'd record like 1 line every 4 months. Who could forget such memorable, iconic lines as these?
Wow. Here you go. Whoops. Again? Let's go see what Phineas and Ferb are doing.
It's the kind of fulfilling role an actor dreams of. Cory and Newt procrastinate for a while, and Newt brings out his childhood seesaw, which accidentally blasts Cory through the ceiling when Newt confuses red and green. Cory's like really mean to Newt in this episode, but I suppose that's understandable given he blasted his scalp through lumber and insulation.
It's not working!
Well, pull harder, Newt! Oh no. Oh no! Got them all! Got them all!
Mina arrives with the Sunshine Girls to save the day.
What is the first thing we have to do in a medical emergency?
Make sure he has insurance.
Unfortunately, Newt accidentally blasts himself through the ceiling as well. Mina shames them because they're supposed to be best friends.
You know, I cannot listen to you anymore. Well, then leave. Mina, please just call somebody and get us out of here, please.
No one is getting out of here until you two make up. You're supposed to be best friends.
Since when? Says who? Who decided that and at what point? Newt's like very visibly a third wheel to Cory and Mina this whole show because he's too stupid to intelligently hold a conversation. Mina decides to abandon Cory and Newt in the attic until they get along and write the song. They're in grave mortal peril here. Luckily, the groove comes to them like a guardian spirit in a sequence seemingly written and directed by Dan Schneider. Get it? Do you get it? With a new song written, and after getting rescued from the ceiling off-screen, a severely sunburnt Nathaniel decides he will not fire them. He's then chased by children. We never see him again. In my opinion, they killed him, and they ravenously mauled him to death mere moments after the fade to black. A scandal the United States government chose to conceal to protect the reputation of Chief Supreme Court Justice Livingston. Season 2, Episode 4, Lip Service. Cory and Newt look for dates to bring to the carnival. Cory exhibits a very Zach Martin-esque behavior, but he gets called out for acting inappropriately by Mina. And a 100% accountability ratio is pretty good when you got young, impressionable kids watching.
Ow! 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 Okay.
What I find interesting is that despite the show constantly claiming Cory and gang are in middle school,
Of an 8th grader,
they're seemingly written as though they're in high school, which is a better match to their physical appearances, which are clearly not passing as middle schoolers.
Soft lips.
Cory's thirsting here really doesn't feel middle school coded in any way. It feels like a hyper absurdist sanitized depiction of high school, which is like the exact opposite problem of late game Zack and Cody, where the show kept stating the kids were in late high school even though they're written the exact same way they were when they were 12. Cory and Newt mutually catch the eyes of Ashley and Ashley.
Ashley conference.
But back at the White House, Newt finds himself too scared to kiss Ashley. No, sorry, Ashley, not Ashley.
Ashley conference.
Then they threaten to leave.
If Newt's not kissing Ashley, then I'm not kissing you.
What?
What?
Cory and Newt conference.
I love how this storyline fundamentally hinges on the Ashleys not even remotely acting like real people.
If you don't kiss your Ashley, I don't get to kiss my Ashley. So sit your Ashley down and get to kissing.
Newt reveals his emotional backstory. When he was 8 years old, he and a girl named Jennifer Cunningham were too nervous to kiss each other at Camp Itchy Coochie. What?
Camp Itchy Coochie.
Camp Itchy Coochie.
Camp Itchy Coochie.
What? We have to make a promise right now that we'll never kiss anyone else until we kiss each other.
Due to this pact, Newt has never kissed a girl and can't bring himself to kiss anyone other than Jennifer.
Want a kiss? Awesome.
What I find interesting is that Newt's had a handful of love interests throughout the series. At one point, he dated a girl named Jessica, who was the smartest girl on the planet, who graduated college at age 9, but went back to high school to have a normal social life. Not to mention his crush Cheyenne from one episode, who was basically just Newt in woman form. Also, and I never mentioned, Cory also hit it off with Cassidy, and Mina hit it off with Shulman. If I had a nickel for every time a Disney Channel series had our main trio meet their one-to-one gender-swapped equivalents for one episode and then never bring those characters back, I cannot think of a clever subversive punchline for this. Everything I've written down and toyed with is just like, I would kill myself. There's also Cory's Raven disguise, plus multiple episodes which prove age is just a number, such as when Newt considers his teacher might be his soulmate, and the aforementioned episode where he gets roped into Sophie's plot to marry him.
You're my wife. You're supposed to support me.
You're my husband. You're supposed to have a real job.
I don't know how to explain this, but she's grooming him. Anyways, all this to say, was Newt not planning on kissing any of those girls, even the ones he was explicitly going on dates with? As news spreads around the school of Cory and Newt not being able to land a kiss on the Ashleys, the Ashleys propose an ultimatum to Cory that Newt must kiss Ashley tonight at the carnival. Cory decides to open a kissing booth at the carnival so Newt can practice, but he bails again, leaving Cory to single-handedly satisfy the massive line of women who paid to get in. Despite paying to kiss Newt, none of them seem to care one iota, but Stickler arrives to feed all the girls sheep nuggets with onion and garlic to make their breath horrible and ruin the experience for Cory.
Horton!
Dang, girl! What, you been chewing on a skunk?
I remember wanting to eat those as a child. They just looked like chicken nuggets to me. The fact that they supposedly tasted awful in the narrative was lost on me.
We paid our buck. Now pucker up.
Mina ultimately tracks down Jennifer Cunningham in the phone book, and she arrives to talk to Newt.
Well, Newt, we were 8, and I have a boyfriend now.
And he's okay with our promise?
I love this ending because she did not keep her promise, and she's borderline flabbergasted that he did. They played this very grounded, rather than playing up a romanticized true love situation.
But Newt, you keeping that promise was just... It was the sweetest thing ever.
She kisses him as a thank you and then leaves. Cory states the moral.
I kissed 163 girls today. And it didn't mean a thing.
This episode takes Newt a little more seriously than usual. Actually cares sincerely about his emotional state, and it sort of feels like Jason Dolley transitioning into the more grounded characters he'd play in future Disney Channel projects. I noticed the other night that Jason Dolley was invited to the Wizards Beyond Waverly Place premiere, and he was reunited with Stickler. As I discussed ad nauseum in my Miniman video, I pray to God every day for that man to have a massive career comeback. He deserves to be famous, dude. I'm so serious. I like Jason Dolley. In the B story, Victor and Sophie develop a playful rivalry, and she viciously taunts him every time he loses a carnival game to her. At a breaking point, he taunts her after the one competition he wins. Unfortunately, within earshot of the president, who sternly tells Victor off for treating his daughter in such a way. But she explains the situation to her dad before long, and Martinez forgives Victor for his transgressions against the nation.
Sorry, Mr. President, I'm leaving. I'll send for the boy later.
I don't know if you've picked up on this, but Victor barely does anything in this entire show. He's kind of just there, often not even contributing to either storyline. I think the reason they had no material for him is that when Cory's storylines only involve his friends at school and there's no mischief that incentivizes a dad to punish him, there's no need for that dad. And when Sophie already has a dad, there's also no need for Victor. The end result is 1 or 2 scenes per episode feeling like they were only written in out of a contractual obligation to include Rundle Sheridan. Sophie, as discussed, takes on a lot more screen time in the second season, usually leading a B plot here as opposed to the first season, where she was most often a side character in the A plot. She was only in 2/3 of the episodes of the first season, here she's only absent from 1. We usually follow her and her friends at school, where Tanisha's evolved into more of a frenemy than an outright enemy.
Did I mention I'm running against Tanisha?
Oh. Picture being so infamous as a first grader that the President of the United States knows who you are. Maybe Sophie and Tanisha are starting a band, or procrastinating a book report, or trying to dress older at a party in a sort of PSA about modest dressing.
Girls, do your parents know you're dressed like this?
You look like hoochie mamas.
Sophie's never doing anything related to the office of the presidency in her B stories. And if Martinez shows up, he's basically just acting as a stock, responsible dad type of character. So we already see half of every episode which no longer has anything to do with the show's initial premise, which is very notable when the A-plots no longer do either. Sophie also becomes far more powerful than Cory. The idea of an 8-year-old outflanking his schemes is evidently funnier than the more grounded dynamic they used to share.
Because I was just wondering if it was your fear of commitment or your incapacity to love.
In general, she's just kind of evil now.
Let's be honest. You don't want to be here, we don't want you here. So how are we gonna work this out?
I'd wager that Sophie's turning point as a character formally began in Season 1, Episode 19, The Kung Fu Cats Kid.
She said dance.
Hey, I heard that. Let's dance.
Tired of her clinging to them and ruining their social lives, Cory and the gang decide to scare Sophie away by showing how dangerous adult life is.
Are you sure we could eat liver-coated octopus?
Every single night.
They tell Sophie that adults commit crimes and they're going to rob the United States Treasury building. The next day, Sophie shows up having seemingly committed the crime solely on her own, prompting the kids to cower in fear at the encroaching Treasury agents. However, it turns out to have all been a ruse, as she saw through their fear-mongering and called upon her connections at the Treasury to let her borrow 50 bars of gold just to teach Cory and the gang a lesson. After this episode, Sophie is pretty consistently 30 steps ahead and going on the offensive herself.
I'll destroy you.
It goes from a back and forth cat and mouse to an absolutely undisputed dominance as this, 6-year-old girl effortlessly outmaneuvers Cory at every turn. But that also means it goes from engaging to utterly predictable, and I honestly think their dynamic became weaker because of it. I'd wager that the most OP Sophie outing comes in Season 2, Episode 5, Who Let the Dolls Out. When Cory's cleaning out his presidential bobbleheads, he has the idea to produce and sell a talking doll of America's Angel. That's what they call her.
So you'll let me do it?
For the kids.
For the kids.
And half the profits.
What happened to the kids?
Realizing Cory has to sign her rights away and he'll make all the money, she blows up at him during a recording session. Cory then embeds these voice lines into the doll to further punish and humiliate her. Determined to prevent him from mass-producing the doll and ruining her image, Sophie devises a plan. Throughout the back half of the episode, Cory comes to believe the doll is haunted as it follows him everywhere, then completely disappears before anyone else can see it. It happens in his bedroom around Victor. It happens in the lockers around Mina. Then it attacks Cory when he's all alone. In enters Sophie, who reveals that the entire situation was a brilliant scheme of her own making. She put in a call to the Secret Service, using her direct hotline to them. They just sit in this room waiting for calls, it seems. Then they spent the entire episode stealthily transferring the doll around like ninjas to gaslight Cory, even going as far as to dig behind his locker in the school. Cory apologizes.
I mean, you trusted me and I took advantage of you.
Allegedly. You might expect me to sit here and point out how this episode's a shining example of how their character dynamic's been ruined, but I can't lie, it was very, very entertaining. There used to be an old doll in my attic growing up, and this episode made me legitimately afraid of it and of dolls in general. If this were a one-off exception, it would be hilarious, but instead it's emblematic of largely every time Cory and Sophie interact in the second season. Early in the episode, Cory mentions he wants to marry Beyonce. For some reason, the Wikipedia page for the show puts this in the core information about Cory, even though it's only mentioned in this one singular episode. Beyond that, she's only mentioned in one other episode from early in the first season.
I want to be in my Daddy's show.
I'll cancel Beyonce.
Good.
Yeah.
In the B story, Mina and Candy suspect Newt found a leprechaun, but it turns out to just be a short guy.
Shut your cabbage trap!
What's his problem?
You threw a net on him 20 minutes ago! This introduced me to the concept of leprechauns and made me fully prepared for the Club Penguin St. Patrick's Day parties. Cory and Candy's relationship's given a lot more of a spotlight in the second season, and it's actually fascinating to see an explicit lack of fidelity in a Disney Channel show.
I know we're friends who sometimes date, and that's totally cool, but if we're not boyfriend, girlfriend, what should I tell people we are?
Who's gonna ask?
You know, other guys.
Cory has all sorts of other love interests in between episodes where he's with Candy, and that's by design. Cory is kind of a sleazebag, and he's expressly communicated to Candy that their relationship is not exclusive. They have the opposite of the usual Disney Channel romance. They're purely dysfunctional. Candy's constantly trying to make Cory jealous by dating other guys, and yet simultaneously yearning for her and Cory to have kids.
You gonna marry Candy and have 9 kids like she said?
In the episode Macho Libre, Cory agrees to a wrestling match with Candy's current partner. They spend the entire episode smugly pretending that they don't actually care about each other, yet they clearly do. They're terrible for each other. But the show is completely aware of this, as are Cory and Candy.
My head is spinning.
My stomach is turning.
We are so wrong for each other.
So wrong.
If we're gonna maintain our on again, off again, hot and cold, up and down relationship, then you're gonna have to be honest with me.
The awareness is what makes this so superior to the frankly abusive relationships of Cody and Bailey or Alex and Mason, which the show repeatedly claims are perfect relationships to an audience of hyper-impressionable little girls.
Bailey, I have rarely seen a couple as perfectly matched as you and Cody.
He broke her ankle 4 episodes ago. The relationship between Cory and Candy is a breath of fresh air, and that is the most interesting Disney Channel romance in any show I've watched. And it's frankly just an unusual dynamic in general. Love is complicated and messy, especially in a non-monogamous arrangement like this, and the show genuinely embraces both the positive and negative aspects of that. They have sweet moments of chemistry and compatibility, and that gets derailed into a train wreck very easily, but they're stuck in this maelstrom of feelings and red flags that they can't escape from.
Why is our relationship so painful?
Tell me about it.
Now, granted, I would far rather be watching Cory cause mischief in the White House than Cory's relationship drama in the A plot and Sophie's elementary school drama in the B plot, with President Martinez only having like 10 lines per episode as he gives Sophie advice as her dad. Let me make that clear. The show is wasting its premise, and this is not what I was hoping to see in a show called Cory in the House. The second season only featured one walk-on guest from That's So Raven, and he just happened to feature in perhaps the single most well-known scene from the entire show due to this upload from 2014. Throughout the original series, Stanley was a huckster who would constantly scheme to backstab Cory, while none of the other adults in the room would believe he had anything other than the sweetest intentions. It's a very cliche storyline where everyone refuses to believe Cory for reasons that don't really feel justified. But Cory in the House was never afraid of being cliche.
My daddy's standing right behind me, innit?
Cory is one of 5 finalists to be celebrated as the Young Business Person of the Year during an annual Tribute to Goodness. Unfortunately for him, none other than Stanley has infiltrated the children's choir. He trips Cory, but no one believes that, and they're angry at Cory for accusing this sweet young boy. At dinner, Stanley fakes an injury when no one's looking, and everyone invites him to stay at the White House for the next year or however long it takes him to recover. Even President Martinez has no critical inquisition on the matter.
On my watch, I wanted to make sure your recovery was a little more fun.
Oh, Mr. President, yo, can I try it?
No.
That night, Stanley schemes to steal Cory's business idea, Banks for Kids. Although Cory shreds his documents, he accidentally articulately recites his entire presentation while sleep-talking. Stanley proceeds to deliver the exact presentation to the president the next morning, and without the documents he shredded, Cory has no proof he was ripped off. Also, Stanley just doesn't have a last name.
Let's give it up for Stanley!
However, Cory has one edge. That night, Stanley lets slip that he's afraid of bones. Now, Cory rigs up a motorized scooter with a skeleton on it to chase Stanley around the rose garden until he dismounts his scooter and proves he never actually broke his leg. He's exposed as a fraud, and a crowd chases him away. Cory wins Young Business Person of the Year immediately after Stanley's outed. I don't think any of the other finalists even gave their presentations. And Stanley's relegated to gigs with the mall singing group at the Pasadena Plaza Mall, which was demolished 7 years prior. The other semi-common viral clip from Cory in the House is this clip of a skeleton on a mobility scooter chasing Stanley around the Rose Garden. And it's from a season 2 episode called Uninvited Pest. And almost any time you see people mention Cory in the House, it just cuts to this clip of the skeleton launching through the air. Do you have any memory of that story?
No, I don't know that one. I'm writing it down. I'll have to check it out.
Vaguely remember it now that you mention it. Stanley came out of Raven also, and we brought him over because he was Cory's nemesis. They wound up having a really funny, interesting, almost comedy team chemistry. So I remember we brought him in. I wish I could remember the specifics of that episode, but it was probably some big, crazy physical thing. If it's on YouTube, I'm going to go back and take a look.
So what is the Stanley connection?
Well, immediately it's just the clip is so strange out of context that people laugh at it. I think I can screen share it if you guys want a refresher.
Sure.
Yeah, let's see.
I can pull that up. It seems like you don't have any strong memory of that story.
I don't.
I remember that scene, though. That was a great scene. It took us a long time to shoot that scene with the effects and all that stuff, but I do remember that. I'm glad it lives on.
It does.
On YouTube.
Ain't nobody like a Cory body, cause the Cory body is off the hook.
In the second to last episode of the series, titled Peace, Love, and Misunderstanding, Cory Baxter single-handedly resolves the Israel-Palestine conflict.
We're introduced to a new student named Saruza Zamudi, whose father is the ambassador of the fictional nation of Dubinia. Cory introduces her to Mina, thinking they'd be great friends because they are literally written identically as characters. Unfortunately, their countries are fierce, bitter rivals.
You are from Dubinia!
You are from Bahavia! Fadushis Batushki!
Oh, you both seem to hate each other.
Yeah!
Cory's informed by Mina that all Dubinians are thieves. Generations ago, Dubinians stole figs from the Bahavian sacred fig tree. But then Cory's suspicions of Saruza prove to be unfounded, and she explains that the sacred fig tree was on the Dubinians' land, not the Bahavians. All Bahavians are liars. Cory's newfound suspicions of Mina also prove to be unfounded. There's an episode of the second season called Peace, Love, and Misunderstanding, in which Mina meets her rival named Saruza, who hails from another fictional company, Dubinia, who's the sworn enemy of Bahavia, and reads very much as an allegory for like a lot of Middle Eastern countries' conflict, like Israel, Palestine, etc. Was that on your mind when you were writing that story?
It was in the back of our mind, like two foreign countries fighting. Why can't we just have peace? We thought of that. That's why we stuck with the fictional countries. But we definitely thought about that as we were writing it. Like, wouldn't it be nice if countries could get together this easily?
It's too bad that people are taught to hate each other.
I know, Dad.
Realizing neither of them are a liar or a thief, Cory decides to bring them together and wear a shirt with each other country's flags on it. The Bahavian flag is just a yak, and I can't tell if that's as stupid as Dubinia having an identical obsession with oxes, which they've also made their flag. How old could this flag be if it's just a printed image of a yak? Unfortunately, it doesn't go well. Every Disney Channel sitcom must have at least one episode where girls angrily fight each other while screaming. Although for the first time in world history, this fight wasn't over a boy, and this fight didn't include either of them rolling on the ground.
There was a peace garden or something.
Yeah, a fountain.
But then there was like a giant brawl at the end or something. I don't know.
I think they fell in the water or the fountain. I think that was it.
The B story is about President Martinez teaching Sophie how to pull better pranks. Cory and the president put their heads together over a midnight snack.
What I like to do is start with the stupidest idea and then work backwards.
Yeah.
Like, what if we made a shirt with both their flags on it?
Stupid.
The next day, they arrange for Ambassador Broom and Ambassador Samudi, Saruza's father, to meet together in the White House.
For the first time in 800 years, representatives from your two countries are sitting face to face.
You said there would be pie.
For some reason, both ambassadors bring their teenage daughters to the negotiation. To combat the rising tensions, Cory decides to give a speech about togetherness, only for his pants to rip and reveal his underwear due to one of Sophie's pranks. Everyone laughs at him so hard, and they have such a good time laughing together, that the 1,000-year conflict is completely resolved and everyone shakes hands. Cory is praised for his humanitarian work, then Mina and Sarusa go to the mall together. I'm really glad it was that easy. Thank you, Cory.
Now, and who would have guessed this is where a Cory in the House retrospective would take us, obviously they used to be viewed very differently in 2008 than it is now. Back then, from a detached American perspective, it was a generational conflict between two equally matched powers. Was that accurate? I don't know. I was 6. In 2024, however, given that the Israeli government has control of almost all of the former Palestinian land, has the full support of the Biden administration and the United States government and military, and has engaged in a year-long military campaign against a population relegated into a strip of land smaller than Chicago, whose flow of water and electricity they control, it tends to be viewed a bit differently. So, given current circumstances where it is pretty arguably a genocide being waged, the whole both sides-ism doesn't age particularly well, but if you transport yourself back to when this episode was written, I feel like there was a positive message and a positive intent.
This brings us to the final episode of Cory in the House, which, as was often the case during this era of television, has absolutely no sense of finality to it. It's just a casual standalone episode that does nothing to round out the series or the franchise. It opens with Mina once again dating Craig Berkowitz. I haven't mentioned Craig yet, and that's because he was her love interest in only the 3rd episode of the entire series. A waiter at the Purple Lobster who she ended the story dating, only for him to never be heard of again. And now, in an honestly wild display of continuity, Cory in the House brings the character back 31 episodes later. They could have just given her a new love interest. No one would care. That would be completely par for the course with these shows, but they brought Craig Berkowitz back. But here, he promptly breaks up with Mina and leaves her furious. During a DC3 rehearsal, an enraged Mina rocks harder than she's ever rocked, and the group starts to write a banger song. Famed movie producer Toshi Nakamura enters the White House, and I think flirts with the president, who enjoys it.
Thanks for the walk around, babe. Should I say Mr. President?
No, babe's good. Babe's good. Yeah. Babe,
President Martinez once again communicates his desire to be a film star, exactly as he did in the previous season's finale. Mr. Nakamura hears a bit of Cory's song and immediately decides that's what he's looking for in his next film. The group reconvenes to finish the song, but unfortunately, Craig and Mina have gotten back together, and now she lacks the anger necessary to finish the song. Cory needs to make her angry again, and seemingly sensing backlash from the broader international community if he were to reinstigate the generational conflict between Dominia and Bahavia, decides instead to manipulate a breakup between Craig and Mina. He disguises himself as Mr. Perum and orders Craig to break Mina's heart again. However, not much time passes before they come to Mina's home, and its first ever appearance, and find Craig being tortured through the Bahavian justice system.
Why can't he talk?
Let's just say the cat got his tongue.
Of course, this all turns out to be an elaborate ruse to trick Cory and teach him a lesson. Mina talks to him like, "Oh, Cory, it's so quirky that you would try to manipulate my relationship like that and make my boyfriend break up with me," and no one's mad at him, even Craig. Also, Ambassador Perum orders a massive tin of chicken wings, and I had interpreted this as a kid to be one singular large chicken wing in this container, and I was very amused by that concept. In the B story, Sylvie and her friends procrastinate doing a book report and decide to watch the movie instead, only to be caught by their teacher who can tell they didn't read the book. And this is the sort of episode I honestly probably would not have even bothered recapping if it wasn't the series finale. In the final scene, the characters discuss Mr. Nakamura having moved on to another project and canceled the movie, which feels very meta and very much like fourth wall commentary on the abrupt end of the show.
Buzz is Toshi moved on to some hot new project.
Well, that's Hollywood.
As it happens, Nakamura moved on because Sophie pitched him a movie about 3 little girls who stayed up all night to cheat on their book report, for which he paid her millions of dollars. And as Cory chases Sophie out of the room, the second season of Cory in the House, and the series as a whole, comes to a very nonchalant and abrupt end.
We were good. In fact, they had renewed us for 30 episodes. So we were well on our way to hitting that 75 episode line where, they could run the show forever and put it into syndication, run it every day on Disney Channel. And then a writer's strike hit and shut us down for 7 months or something. And then when we came back, they decided to pull the plug on it.
We wanted to do one. Just when they were shutting us down, we wanted to do one where they go on an expedition to another fictitious country, and Cory sees this sword stuck in a stone, and he pulls it out and says, "What is this?" And he didn't realize the legend is whoever could pull out the sword becomes king of that country, and he was going to become king of some fictitious country, but we never got that far.
Here's something I observed while rewatching the series earlier this year. The second season consists of 13 episodes, but there's production codes that go up to 215 listed on Wikipedia, which makes me wonder if there were 2 unaired episodes of the show.
Well, yes, probably, or unfinished. I'm not really sure what the last. I'm actually going to look on the episode list here, but.
Did the Mexican wrestling one air?
That one aired, yeah.
That one aired. What did it say on IMDb was the last episode airing?
I have that here. The last one that aired was called Mad Songs Pay So Much.
Mina writes an angry song.
Yes, that's it.
About a boyfriend.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. That aired, but I don't know what the other one was.
What was the one when the strike was on, Dennis, and you went in?
The boat. That was the boat.
That was the last episode?
Yeah, we never finished the boat.
We had a script. We had 2 scripts ready to go, and they were probably in pre-production, and I don't believe they were shot. So that may be why there were production numbers on them. But the strike kind of cut it off. They wanted to go in and finish because even though we were writers, we were also producers. So they asked us to go in and shoot the shows, but we couldn't, according to the Guild and to the strike, we couldn't do any writing. But it's very hard to be on set and watch something and not rewrite a line or something like that. And we felt we couldn't do it, so we kind of opted not to.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't make any sense. If you go on strike, the idea is let's stop production, shut everything down, and sit down and negotiate. If you go on strike and you keep producing more shows, there's no incentive to sit down and negotiate. So you have to stop right where you are. And we did stop in the middle of an episode about Newt takes the friends on a boat. It's his family boat, a yacht. And in the course of shooting this, Kyle wanted to do his own stunt, and he fell off the boat onto a pad, but bounced off the pad, which was there for safety purposes, banged his head, had to go to the hospital. The show was shot down.
Afterwards, because he came back, remember, he wasn't allowed to run. He had to have somebody next to him all the time.
That's right.
Did shoot episodes after that. Yeah, maybe the boat one, maybe we shut that one down.
Yeah, we shut that and never finished that one. Yeah, because we did the wrestling episode, and somebody else did the stunts
after the boat.
And yeah, that's why we picked the mask. So Kyle himself wouldn't have to do the stunts because he wasn't supposed to do physical activity after he got hurt on the boat episode.
Yeah,
but the boat episode was half done. It's sitting somewhere, but I don't know the other one. I wonder what the other one is.
Do you still have the scripts for the episodes, like anywhere on your files?
Probably not. I have DVDs of most of the episodes, production DVDs, but we never made that one because we never finished it. We never did the boat. And there must be a script somewhere.
They may have files at Disney Channel or something on it, that there might be one of the executives might be able to dig it out.
It seems like you may have touched on some reasons, but why was Cory in the House ultimately canceled? Was it mainly writer's strike?
It was writer's strike and that accident. It turned into a lawsuit from Kyle's family, and that it put a whole bad taste over everything. We walked off in the middle of production in the writer's strike, and Kyle's family is suing Disney. So when the strike was over and they had to pick which shows should we pick up, they kind of looked at us, I feel, this is just my opinion, and said, you know what, it's too much trouble.
But they did keep us on the hook for like 3 or 4 months after the show was over, so we couldn't take another job, or they kept waiting to see if they were going to pick up the show, and then ultimately they didn't. My thought is that they wrote us off, and they were never going to pick it up. But
that was our punishment to make us wait.
And I'm inclined to mention that this scoop of the show ending due to the lawsuit from Kyle's family was actually just revealed about a month ago in a book called Disney High, The Untold Story of the Rise and Fall of Disney Channel's Tween Empire. The author Ashley Spencer brought it to my attention, and there are so many things in here which would have been incredibly useful to know at the time I was doing my Sweet Life videos. Like one of the co-creators of The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody was fired before On Deck. And multiple creators of the network basically revealing how the channel created this culture of fear within its creators, constantly firing and replacing them. Mark even mentioned it during this call.
Have you seen the new book, the Disney High book?
I was actually just pointed to that by the author like a few days ago on Twitter. So I had I'd listened to the Raven section right before doing this.
Yeah, there's a lot in there about even Stevens and Raven.
That's a lot of fun with some dark secrets come out in that book too. Who hated who fought with who was jealous of who. It's pretty cool, yeah.
It's very well done. It's very well written. So enjoyed it as a Disney fan.
Cory in the House is a show that had so much potential and executed it fairly masterfully throughout its early first season, but just so quickly lost all of the wind in its sails and completely squandered its premise. It feels a lot like the very first show I covered on this channel, Milo Murphy's Law. Two shows that had very short-sighted story engines that weren't capable of sustaining themselves for a full TV show, both of which exhaust. Oh, there's a wind tornado. There's like a wind tornado. That's what will happen if Joe Biden wins this election. There'll be more wind tornadoes. A cyclone or a dust cloud would have been more accurate, given that tornadoes are typically made of wind. Feels a lot like the first show I covered on this channel, Milo Murphy's Law. Two shows that had very short-sighted story engines that weren't capable of sustaining themselves for a full TV show, both of which exhausted themselves before the end of the first season. That was the conclusion I came to after watching the show, and so it was strangely validating to hear Mark and Dennis basically admit that themselves during the Zoom call. When I think about things like, say, Cory abandoning his crush on Mina 14 episodes in, it makes me feel like Cory in the House was not particularly well planned out, and they probably had a very limited runway of time to transition from filming Raven to filming Cory.
Despite President Martinez appearing in an episode of Hannah Montana, one can't help but observe that in the second episode of Hannah Montana's 4th season, a president appears resembling Barack Obama, less than 4 years after Martinez began his term. This has raised a question amongst critics and scholars alike for generations. What happened to President Martinez? President Martinez seems to be starting his term in January 2007. He appears in a Hannah Montana episode in June of 2007, as we talked about. However, in a July 2010 episode of Hannah Montana's 4th season, a president shows up resembling Barack Obama. So my question is, that's less than 4 years later, why wasn't President Martinez able to finish his term? What happened?
Well, we don't answer gotcha questions here.
No, I'm sure there was some horrible scandal. They found out in the White House that he was going way over on the midnight snack budget. And it came back to haunt him in the next election.
It's tricky to rank this against the pantheon of other series I've revisited. If this show were to have ended with the 1-2-3 punch of Air Force One Too Many, That's So in the House, and Gone Wishin', I think it'd land comfortably in the A tier because everything that came before it was charming and entertainingly absurd. But the show limps through its back half, showcasing incredibly boilerplate school storylines which abandon Samuels and cast Martinez aside. I've watched some shows that are miserable exercises in monotony, which are genuinely painful to revisit as an adult. Cory in the House is never that. At its worst, it's just boring, which is far from the biggest sin one of these series has committed. For that reason, I think I can comfortably slot this into the C tier when I look at the overall big picture of the show.
At the end of the day, in the heart and the soul of the American experiment, Cory Baxter never left the house, and Cory Baxter never will leave the house. There's no need to put him back in because he's already there. The end. God bless America.